So good afternoon, all the guests. I mean, Professor Delaney, Professor Martin Molina, and Prof. Cheng, and Mr. Dean Cheng, and also distinguished the participants and my friends. Okay, I'm very honored here today to welcome you all to our event in a sense. So. So I'm Cheng. I'm the professor in geoinformatics in UCL. I'm also the founder and the director of SpaceTimeLab. So I appreciate your efforts to join us today. In the uncertainty of the challenge of transport, which we're going to talk a lot today. So today's workshop is serves as an occasion to celebrate or to look back what we have done in the past over the past decade. But more importantly, is to look forward and to innovation. So we're eager for the panel discussion, which brings together very impressive roster of speakers. This includes Professor Cheng, and he's the head of the Civil and Environment Engineering and the chair in navigation and positioning. And we also have Mr. Andy Emmons. He's the chief transport analyst of Transport for London. And we also have Dr. Olga Friedman. She's the senior director of Arcadius. And we also have Dr. Chris Gale. He is the head of geospatial analysis and the capacity of Office of National Statistics. And the moderator will be Dr. Sarah Weiss. She's associate professor of the Center of Advanced Spatial Analysis. She's also the recipient of the very prestigious UKRI Future Leaders Fellowship. Both Chris and Sarah, of course, all of our very proud alumni. For following that, we were going to have three speakers, also alumni of our lab. They all the ESRI awards received. So, and following that, because we're going to have Ed Manley. He is now professor in the University of Leeds, going to be chaired by Professor Chris Brunsdon. And Professor Chris Brunsdon is the professor in geocomputation from the University of Manley in Ireland. So I hope this is full of surprising and excitement, because this really marked our journey in the past 10 years. But as I said, more importantly, I hope this is going to provide a unique platform for future cooperation to take root. To facilitate this conversation or discussion, actually we also arranged some live demonstrations which are going to be shown during the coffee break. So please take this opportunity to really know each other, because we're also very privileged to have delegates from the government bodies, which including, I mentioned already, TfL, and many delegates from Transport for London and Public Health England, Ordnance Surveying, and the Greater London Authority, among others. And also have academics and industries nationally and internationally, and many of them just finished their conference in geoinformatics right here about an hour ago. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming, and I really hope you have an enjoyable afternoon and also the dinner tonight. But please be assured, I know some of you guys really worry about the train strike this evening. So we will ask about to come to the ferry maybe half an hour early. So we will be able to enable you guys safely go back home before the strike started. Okay? So thank you again. So may I present Professor?
Thank you very much, Tao. And I'm just here for a few minutes to welcome you all to our department. So I'm Jose Torero Callen, the head of Civil Environmental and Geomatic Engineering. And I would like to start by basically try to highlight a little bit how important this activity is for our department. Many people always joke that our department is actually known as CEGE, and the reason why we call it CEGE is because it's a mouthful, and it's because we have civil, environmental, and geomatic engineering. Now, the reason why we keep the word geomatic engineering is because we recognize the importance that this area of research has for our department. And in particular, the SpaceTime Laboratory, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Now, this workshop, Unlocking Space and Time, the Future of AI and Smart Cities, it is clearly, as you all very well know, a very topical subject, and shows very clearly how this laboratory has remained at the forefront of the discipline. The last couple of days, we have witnessed a constellation of people that have come here to try to present their different activities, and today is no exception to that. But before I start, I would like to welcome Mr. Ding King from the Chinese Embassy in the UK. Thank you very much for being here, and I will pass the word for you in a minute. So, and our collaborators from the Turing Institute, Professor Birkin, and from UCL CASA. But before I pass the word to Mr. Ding King, I want to first and foremost acknowledge tradition. I think our department is a department that has a long tradition. Our programs have existed, for almost 200 years now, and the space-time activity and the geomatics activities are no different. In as such, Professor Tao Cheng founded this laboratory and has very successfully done it and make it an extraordinary and emblematic part of our activities. And we're extraordinarily proud of what you have achieved. And but a testament to his achievements is the roots from where you come. So I want to make sure that I acknowledge individuals that have been extremely important in your own history and education. And so I would like to acknowledge Professor Darren Lee, who I had the opportunity to listen to his exceptional presentation yesterday. Thank you very much for the time that you took to present your exceptional work. And he's a member of the Chinese Academy of Science and Chinese Academy of Engineering, and a professor at Wuhan University. But most importantly, he was the supervisor of Professor Cheng's MSc. And in a similar way, I would like to acknowledge Professor Martin Molinar, Emeritus Professor of Spatial Data Acquisition and GIS at Twente University, who has been the president of the Netherlands Geodetic Commission, and who, as part of many other accolades, he was awarded with royal honors as officer in the Order of Orange-Nassau in the Netherlands. And again, but most important, you were PhD supervisor to Professor Cheng. And finally, Professor Wolfgang Kentz, Emeritus Professor of Cartography and Geographic Information Science at the University of Vienna, who is the editor-in-chief of ISPRS, the International Journal of Geoinformatics, who was the second supervisor of Professor Cheng's PhD. Finally, I want to acknowledge Professor Ian Dolman, Emeritus Professor of Geomatics at University College, and the editor of Geomatics World, who, as I learned yesterday, is the person responsible for Professor Cheng being here and developing the activities that we have been talking about. In as such, I mean, there's a number of people that have worked with us for many years, different government departments, organizations. There's my counterpart at Imperial College, Professor Cheng, and many other illustrious guests that we have welcomed in the last few days here in our department. So thank you very much for joining us here and celebrating this exceptional opportunity. And I would like to pass the word, to Mr. Ding Mingqing, so that he can address us on behalf of the Chinese Embassy. Thank you very much.
pleasure. Distinguished Professor Cheng, Professor Cheng, Professor Colin, and distinguished scientists, especially supervisors for Professor Cheng. I'm really delighted to attend this SpaceTimeLab's 10th anniversary workshop, and glad to see some very well-known Chinese scientists visiting here. Since the establishment of diplomatic relationship, the China-UK cooperation has achieved much and have brought tangible benefits to the peoples of our host countries. Amid the complex and changing situation, international situation, both sides still have been keeping dialogues and communications, expanding mutually beneficial cooperation. And the SpaceTimeLab is one of them, which has also made great contributions to enhancing scientific and technological cooperation between our two countries. Science and technology cooperation is a very important component of the China-UK relationship. In the past 10 years, the number of co-authored papers by Chinese and British researchers showed exponential growth, climbed to the second place globally. It accounted for approximately 11% of the total UK papers in 2019. There were also great potentials for China-UK cooperation in areas such as public health, biodiversity, green and low carbon technologies, and entrepreneurship, etc. Recently, the delegates from Foreign, Commonwealth, and Development Office of the UK have paid a visit to the Science and Ministry of Science and Technology in China. Both sides agreed to consolidate and deepen bilateral cooperation in science, technology, and innovation, and agreed to facilitate a new round of flagship challenge program between China and the UK. After more than 30 years of development, China has made significant progress in the field of geographic information system, forming a complete industrial system from data acquisition and processing to analysis and applications. China has increased its effort in R&D for key technologies in the area of geographic information system, which will provide strong support for various applications in digital economy and digital governance. Strongly supported by the government, the UK's geographic information system has always been a relatively mature high-tech industry with rapid growth. The SpaceTimeLab possesses unique research capabilities and expertise in this area, especially in the transport and mobility, security and policing, business intelligence, and environmental resilience, etc. This presents numerous opportunities for both future cooperation between China and the UK in the field. Our embassy in London will, as always, continue to support the expansion of bilateral exchanges and cooperation, especially mutual beneficial cooperation in regulatory areas inject more positive energy into the development of China-UK relations. I wish this workshop a great success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I think especially you are able to make the time come here, and you very busy schedule. Thank you so much. And I also want to mention special thanks to Professor Hussein, because the department has been very generously sponsored this event. So this is possible, especially for both the dinner live. So please join me to give another round of applause to the speakers as well. Okay, so I'm going to start looking back. Okay, so what really happened in the past 10 years of SpaceTimeLab. We start with a video. Wow, thank you. So that's really, really brief 1 minute of this SpaceTimeLab, how we start from 0 to 1, hopefully. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time to really look at basically why we are here, and really talk a little more about the research we have been done in the past decade, and then show you a little bit of the, we hope, maybe a little bit real world impact, and then some special things. So our mission is really to generate actionable insight and foresight from the geotagged and time-stamped data set. So really we want to help government, business, and also the society. So how to do that? We really integrate the space-time thinking, network-based approach, and really use related cutting-edge AI. So hopefully to really provide solutions for mobility, safety, health, public health, and prosperity of every living. So it's a long decade to look back. So I'm trying to summarize what is really happening. Somehow in my career, say how we go from originally the integrated spatial temporal modeling to where we are. I think we summarize it in 4 stages. So I'm going to expand this 4 stages with a little time. So we started from really early stage. I joined UCL in 2006. So it's a long time, 17 years. So actually, this started from the work the work we really did in China. Actually, I first PhD student, Zhang Chou, is here, very picture too. So basically, we started very early stage to talk about the weather temperature forecasting. So we study about what we call the spatial temporal auto-arrangement. Is anyone doing modeling? They know it's about space and time. And we also integrate together with neural network. But it took me 2 years of this paper published because not many people know spatial and temporal and know neural networks. So that took me 2 years to get this first paper published. So we got a little like later on. So actually we moved to working with transport for London. Andy is here now. So this is my co-op. Ben is here as well. Thank you so much for coming here today. So that's the first branch of my team. So we look at the really dynamics of transport. We look at the dynamic order correlation and learn the really dynamic, and then how we can integrate it into a SPRM model. So we really say we should emphasize the locality and the dynamics. So that's the model way. It's a very first generation integrated dynamic STRM. So all the finding more or less in the book chapter in this handbook. So show a little bit of work is a long time ago. So this is the work of James Haworth. Okay, so what do we do in this one? So very lucky, we got some data within M25. At that time, Google don't have data within M25, and it kindly provide to us. But there's some challenges in the data, lots of missing data. So how are we going to deal with that? So actually, James managed to use some machine learning approach and also use a model we just described to able to make a short-term journey time prediction. I think we also did a simulation. Ellie is going to talk about a little bit later on, so I'm not going to talk more about it. But this simulation really used the real capacity of the road and the real OD, which also kindly provided by Andy. So we also developed some very interesting visualization, and actually also a little bit work with Chris Brunsdon on this visualization. So yeah, so that's a little bit cool of the work in a very early stage. So then we moved to the next stage. So I started working with Metropolitan Police to really look at the level of complexity because I think policing, citizens, and crime, they really make several networks. So as you can see, it's a huge team, okay? So we got my co-I, Professor Longley of user geography, Professor Kate Bowers from crime science, and Professor John Taylor from the computer science. As you can see how big the team is, and also advisor from Professor Michael Kuchard and also Chris Brunsdon. So I think the major finding actually summarized in this small report or small book. So we really proposed or integrated or data-driven policing. So try to think of how we can tackle the crime in a holistic way. So show a little bit was detailed work. I think some of the long night here. So this is work by, so we really say, you know, the very first time we are able to make the crime hotspot prediction at the street level. Because conventionally, people make crime hotspot prediction at the regional or grade level. I think what's the use for that? Police don't really walk around the blocks. They really want to walk on the street. So we are the very first to do the network-based approach. More than that, actually, we also develop strategy which is the work of Juan Fa is going to talk a little bit more later on, to based on this hotspot, how we can optimize the patrolling. So the patrolling can really make sure the workload is balanced, and we can also deal with emergencies. We can also accommodate in the workload or the staff change. I think Sarah was working on to how we can understand the whole patrolling strategy. This is on then we can really think about strategic planning of the work of the police force. We was working on studying about the public trust in policing, and also I think Chris was looking at how this is associated with social demographics. So show a little bit of cool stuff. So this is really more than that. We want to study about the behavior. Of course, use the police movement as an example. So this is 300 police foot patrol officers, 24 hours in 2 months, subjective data set. So from that, actually, we're analyzing which is the space and time the police want to focus on. We call them spatial temporal region of interest. So it's not 2 dimension, 3 dimension. So more than that, actually, based on that, we can analyze the police behavior. So which space-time region of interest really can get in. So actually, we can profiling them. So as I said, we do network-based approach. So this is the conventional grid-based approach. Now we move to network. So we actually study about line of interest of space and time, and then the police behavior can be really shown this way. So this way is much more accurate as well. So more accurate. So that's why we do network-based approach. So more than that, we understand the people engagement with space and time. So this is really talking about how we can improve, or guys here, how we can improve targeted advertisement for TFL. So that's what we do with the social media data, trying to understand what's the major interest of people around the London Tube Station, 256 of them, and how they change with time. And more than that, again, we can also put them into networks. So we can really understand what's the major interest of people even there walking around the street. So within this project, we were very lucky. We were able to get about 20,000 people voluntarily contributed lots of information, social demographics, sample and all the information. But more than that, around 2,000 of them willing to share their movement trajectory and also associate with the social demographics. So because of that, we're able to analyze how people change this behavior when the government have different policies, how this can change associated with their age and their income. So this is really the younger age, this is the lower income. So what is really showing here basically are the younger people, the people who are really have low income. They are the ones the most impacted. We will understand old people, probably maybe the one really suffer from this pandemic. But actually, young, poor people, they are the one really be locked. This is the time they spend at home. They be really locked at the home. And doing this, especially in those 3, or actually we have 3 lockdowns. So this is what they're showing here. And of course, we also use the social media data to study about how people's sentiment to public policy about wearing the mask, washing hands, and now the latest one is about vaccination. So the interesting finding is for people who are for male above age 40, they are positive about vaccination, but their sentiment is not as strong as female. Actually, whenever women say the way pro-vaccination, we are stronger. So that's another interesting finding, of course, from the lab, because the attitude towards vaccination is really different, especially. So now, where we are now, okay? So we mentioned about the ChatGPT, but now actually the team actually trying to embrace it, to try to embrace what's the latest about the generative AI, to really say, can we predict from where we are here and now to the future? So it's really say, how can we transit from here and now to there and the future? Because I think that's the most important thing if you really want to embrace GPT. So there's a few things going on with the lab. So I'm focused on really understand what's really happening during the pandemic, how people really respond to it in the UK and Singapore, luckily funded by Human Institute project. I think Cheng Haworth is really leading the team to really trying to push more on the agenda of level 0 to try to say how we can help more people get on the bike. So to push the active travel. It has another project with the EU mobility to really look at how can we improve the safety of cycling, which is part of the Mohammed's work going to talk later on. More than that, now the whole team going to use very cool 300 degrees cameras to really study about the safety. I think we have some demo later on. Another colleague, unfortunately, he's not able to join us today. He's an associate professor in machine learning. His expertise really in natural language processing. The whole team actually is working on how we can improve the natural language processing. They got some funding from Amazon to, I think later on, you will listen to their talk. So, when we talk about STGTP, I call it the STGTP or STGAI. So what does it really mean? I personally think there's lots of challenges, also two very crucial for this spatial domain. So one is about the data, one is about dynamics. So about data, we will know. Yesterday we had listened to lots of keynotes about some small data, so very designed data set. For us, we use a lot of voluntarily contributed data set or passive data set. So how we're able to put them together? More than that, we know data have issues, sparsity, noisy, sample issue, uncertainty. But we're never able to measure them. We can't really embrace the beauty of those work. So that's the one thing we hope through the work with TFL, we hope we're able to somehow crack a little bit of that. So that's one of the exercises we're doing. Another thing we're doing is really, I think, the dynamics. So we know AI is powerful. We're able to do lots of things if we got enough labeled data set. But the challenge is we never measured this data before. If we have some new points adding to the load, there's a new load being added. No one knows the flow how it's going to be distributed. If we lost the connection, how the thing is going to change precisely? We can't train them because we don't have historical data set. So I think that's some beauty we would like to solve as well. So that's the kind of the challenge we are facing. So I'll show you a little bit example. Say, I hope that this is a starting point for us to get on this journey. So actually, from a visiting researcher from National Seoul University, from Sula. So basically, we're able to develop what we call the multimodal graph database. So what is the difference of this model with what the conventional multi-layered networks? Because this model really say is an integrated network. That means to say like a case course is one node on one node, only one node in the whole database. That means this node is on tube network, and bus network, and Eurostar. It's different from other models. We have so many layers, bus, tube, train, all those. So this is a very compact network. So this really enable us to do multi-queries much more effectively. So this is paper published because I'm cautious about time, I'm not going into detail. But this can give us some hope. We're able to integrate multimodal data into one database. That are able to enable us to do multimodal data mining. Of course, we're able to bring in all other data sets there. Oh, sorry. So yes, we can't just talk about science without talking about the impact. So he's just show you some of the examples which we are very proud of, say, what have been done. So one of them is the very early work, working with Europe, and this is made by my very first PhD in UCL Artemis. So we managed to kind of use the mental model to help Europe to develop a strategy, how we can enhance public trust, to have a site on nuclear waste proposal. And of course, we were very proud, Andy is here, so with the visualization, we are able to deliver a tool for Transport for London to really visualize the journey time reliability during the London Olympic Games. And with PhD in is here, we do something about their social campaign, about their HIV test and the sexual distribution, and sexual disease transmission. And of course, with the market segmentation and the very hard work have been done with Metropolitan Police. The hotspot crime prediction has been integrated into their internal system to guide the police patrolling. And the borrowers would use that to reduce the crime, reduce compared with others, which use us less. Okay. Of course, if we say the iBox with Mustafa Muhammad, and then not the last but not least. So we are very proud working with TFL, trying to use our multimodal traffic flow to support the digital twin system. And the two PhD students of the lab are actually the internship of the Department of Transport. I hope they can do a good job there. So we cannot do this without our generous contribution from our partners. The only finding their expertise and inspiration is the drive behind all this. So I'm glad quite a few of the partners are here today, so I thank them for their support. Because the time I'm going to read them all out. So major science, I think they are mentioned already. So yeah, this long time, Professor Lee, more than 10 years ago, 2007. You kindly bring the team come to visit here, I mean, including the secretary, she's here as well, nice to see here as well. This is my PhD event in Holland, very formal event, which was 1999. I have two mentors I want to mention as well. One is Professor Markibati. I think most people know him. He's a professor in CASA. I think because of him, I came to UK actually. In 2001, I was a lecturer in University of Leicester. It's because of him. And then I think you have written many letter of reference for me for my second job in UCL. And the last person I mentioned already is Professor Mark Goodchild. He has been kindly helping us to say as advice actually. He's officially launched SpaceTimeLab 10 years ago. So unfortunately, for personal reasons, he couldn't visit us today, but he sent us his wishes. So that's a very good picture to say. Thanks to Professor Longley is here and his wife, Professor Zhu is also here. I really appreciate that they traveled 1,000 miles able to join us for the conference and for today. Thank you for that. Of course, the thanks cannot be ended without thanking all the people who have been working with me in the past now 17 years in UCL. Not all of them are here, but this can show a little bit of what we do here. We work hard, we present, but we also enjoy life, and I think that's very important. So, very interesting. Actually, this May, our team visited Singapore to met our alumni there. So we still keep on sharing our pictures and sharing our memories, but of course we want to share the future. So I think I hope that's the aim for me as well, share the future with you. With that note, thank you so much for your attention. I now want to pass to Dr. James Haworth. He has been the left hand and right hand of me. What does it mean? That means he has tolerance my imperfect English and sometimes my impatient. You notice that as well. But more importantly, he has supported all of them because he's the first lecturer in the lab. So thanks, James. May I hand it to you?
Thank you, Tam. I'm not going to put this on properly because I've only got a few minutes to talk. Before I let Tao go, I just wanted to say thank you to her. When I joined the lab, which is now 15 years ago, before the lab actually existed, I was an MSc student and I applied for a PhD with Tao and Transport for London and with Andy Emmons, who's sitting back there. And I hadn't even taken Tao's module, but luckily she took a punt on me. And then a few years later I became a lecturer and she supported my career ever since. And I think you can see from the people in the pictures and the video at the start, she supported the career of many people throughout the last 10 years and beyond. And also got lots of very distinguished colleagues who have made the trip here today. So I think that shows how respected she is in the field. So let's have another round of applause for Tao. Okay, so now it's my real privilege not to talk about myself, but to introduce our great team of students who, throughout this whole week especially, have worked extremely hard to put the conference together and to put this event together. I'm sure this weekend hopefully they'll survive, but they're going to be sleeping for most of it. We couldn't do any of this without them. Before I hand over to them, I'm going to briefly introduce our current research teams. And if you haven't got a copy, you can pick up our newly printed brochure, which has a little bit more information about these, which we've designed ourselves because we're multi-talented people. So we have, at the moment, 4 broad research themes that we're placing our research into. So I guess you could say we started with transport and mobility, as Tal mentioned, working with Transport for London. Our work in that field has evolved from working with travel time data on London's roads, doing kind of statistical and machine learning methods for forecasting, all the way up to now using using massive GPS data sets to try and understand urban travel modes and how people travel. The second theme we're talking about is safety and security. So again, starting with the CPC project, Crime Policing and Citizenship that Tao mentioned, we've moved towards road safety, and now we're doing some interesting things with computer vision of data taken from cyclists as they cycle around London's roads, which enables us to really understand kind of the detailed risk factors associated with cycling. Our next topic is business intelligence. So we have all of these large data sets about the spatiotemporal movements of people, and that has a real kind of commercial element, which in the last few years we've been trying to realise. And it's all about where people go, when they go there, how long they stay there, and if we can put that to use for people to better understand their customers and their customers' movements, then we can use that for business purposes. And finally, something which we're not going to talk about so much today, but which has been extremely important over the past few years, and we've worked a lot on it in the lab, is health and well-being. So we're still feeling the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. As Tam mentioned, we were part of the Virus Watch project, trying to understand how people's mobility affects their outcomes in relation to COVID. And I've kind of put these as separate themes, but really they're all interconnected, and they're all really linked to our use of spatiotemporal data sets about human mobility and human behaviour. And that's really the kind of the core business of the lab, is understanding what people do, where they do it, when they do it, and how that links up to all of these different aspects. So while we split this presentation into these multiple research themes, really they're all interlinked. So it's my privilege to introduce Cheng. He's going to talk about our transport and mobility theme, and I'm going to pass it over to our students, and they're going to put on hopefully a great show, and then I'll just wrap up at the end.
Okay, I will merely introduce the transport and the mobility part. For this part, our mission is about how can we generate actionable insights and a deployable algorithm for promoting sustainable mobility, enhancing transport resilience, and also improve the user's experience using some new forms of data set and some novel methods. So for the sustainable mobility part, as you all know, it's a quite big topic. But in my research, I mainly focus on how can we use some time-saving, cost-saving, and easy deployable methods to promoting sustainable mobility. Especially after the pandemic in the UK and London, they introduced a lot of small-scale transport intervention and also deployed a lot of new form travel service like low-traffic neighbors to redistribute route space, and also deploy some shared mobility facilities to encourage more people to take public transit and active travel. But as for now, unfortunately, we don't have any solid evidence to support this kind of scheme, and especially for sustainable mobility. When we introduce some policy or service, it will influence a lot of different travel modes and also impacts different scale and dimension, especially for different group people like the residents, visitors, or workers. They have different response to this kind of policy. So in this context, we are quite lucky to get a very big mobile phone data set. So I developed a travel mode detection algorithm which can detect a quite comprehensive 7 travel modes from the original data set, including the bus, car, tube, train, walk, cycling, stationary. And also we can identify different people groups like residents, workers, or the visitors. Of course, we achieve quite a good accuracy from the data set. So based on this data set and the algorithm, I think we can understand and analyze the sustainable mobility through these 3 aspects. First, we can monitor the multimodal mobility. Because we got the data, so it's very easier to monitor the individual level travel behavior, like travel distance, travel time, travel routine, and their travel mode. Of course, we can aggregate individual level information to the network level to generate the multimodal traffic flow at the whole transport network, not only include the strategic route, but also include the local routes. I think it's really useful to support transport operation and also help us to think about the future if we want to redistribute the traffic route space for different travel modes to support the sustainable mobility. I think this kind of data set is really useful. And because this kind of monitoring information, actually we can also going to understand and monitor the impacts of transport disruption, like short-term impacts or the long-term impact, such as the tube strike or the COVID. For example, for the strike, I think everyone experienced strike this week. Yeah, we can provide some information about this kind of impacts. And also for the second part, I think it's really important to think about if we really want to achieve net zero target or transport decarbonization, we need to know which stage we are in and what kind of action we need to take for the future. So for the transport, for the sustainable mobility target, we can monitor the active travel, how many people have already achieved the active travel target, and estimate the transport carbon emission, and identify who contributes to the carbon emission and by which travel mode. I think it's really useful for the government and also for the society to develop some carbon credit trading market to support the decarbonization. And for the last part, I think we spend a lot of money to invest a lot of facilities and introduce the scale. We need to know what kind of influence this kind of policy will bring to the transport network and to the society. For example, based on, I already developed a generic methodology for the transport intervention evaluation. So we can go into say what's the impact for the individual travel behavior, like this map shows the low traffic figures in London. After you introduce this kind of scale, people change their routing and their travel mode. Especially we can see the traffic flow change within the neighborhood to see what's the difference before the intervention, and also to see how different group people respond to this kind of policy. So I hope this kind of research can help us to achieve the sustainable mobility. And that's all about my research. I will pass on to Mustafa that can introduce transport resilience platform. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Thanks, Cheng. Today I will talk about the algorithms and modern approaches we use at SpaceTimeLab in transport domain. Probably you touch these algorithms if you use ChatGPT. Everyone uses ChatGPT now. Or if you generate some images or videos by using generative AI tools. I mean, all these tools now using reinforcement learning or attention mechanisms, transformers. But the question is how we can use these in transport domain. Let's start with. By the way, this one also is generated by AI. I mean, it's about my research on dynamic road networks. Let's start with reinforcement learning. How we can apply reinforcement learning into the transport domain. Let's imagine you have macro level visions like traffic flow or travel speed. The question is, can you understand human behaviors, especially individuals' routing behaviors? We train intelligent agents by using reinforcement learning, and we gave them some rewards according to the traffic flows on the route and let them to navigate through the entire network. And the results show that we can extract all the most taken routes, showing people's choice on routes in order without need any assumptions on their choice. So it can be seen like from macro level patterns to the micro level routing behaviors. So it was really interesting. Right? What about the other ones, other algorithms? For this one, I will talk about my main idea for my PhD. This time the question is, what happens if the structure of the network is changed? It can be applied to road networks, or it can be applied unmanned aerial vehicles, etc. For example, if the local authority decided to close the one bridge, or if one road segment is closed because of traffic accidents, how the flow is going to be redistributed through the entire network. So for this type analysis, we can use graph neural networks to capture spatial and temporal dependencies, or we can use attention mechanisms or transformers to detect most critical points, regions, most affected road segments, or we can use the generative adversarial networks, like to generate synthetic data to simulate these extreme cases. And also we can transfer this one model from target network to the source network. So these are the really interesting and it's really fun to work on it. So if you have any question or if you have any idea for collaboration, please contact me with email. And now I will pass to my colleague to talk about augmented reality in transport domain. Thank you.
Besides transport resilience, we also focus on enhancing individual user experience through augmented reality for pedestrian navigation. Imagine a world where pedestrian navigation is no longer about looking at a two-dimensional map, but about walking in a world where direction, road, and the point of interest are laid out for you in real time through augmented reality. This is exactly what we are working on. Now, let's take a moment to watch a video showing an initial and rough case from UCL main campus to British Museum. The objective of this study is to perform real-time object detection and segmentation, match the POI data from the store map, and better navigate for pedestrians. By blending the digital elements with the physical world, we plan to create an interactive and enhanced version of the real world that can help pedestrians navigate with much more easy and accuracy. In this case study, we use an AI navigation system on a pre-planned road, and here we can see some extracted location with real-time detection and segmentation. That image represents a view that a user of our system would see in real time through augmented reality, effectively changing the way we navigate our surroundings. This is the future of pedestrian navigation, and we believe this approach to pedestrian navigation will open up new possibilities for transportation and mobility. Thank you. Now I'll pass to my colleague Cheng.
Thanks, Charles. Hello everyone, my name is Cheng, and in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to introduce another important part of our research, which is business intelligence. So we, in this part, we performed comprehensive spatial temporal analytics, as well as the state-of-art NLP techniques to address real-world problems faced by governments, local councils, business owners, and even big tech companies like Amazon. So in saying so, this section is divided into three parts. First, I'm going to introduce the study about the recovery of retail and financial centers. And next, we'll be talking about the study on profiling customers in major retail venues. And then, lastly, my colleagues will introduce how they built advanced conversational systems to improve commercial intelligence assistant and medical dialogue system. So we all know that the long-going pandemic has eventually come to an end, as the World Health Organization announced this May that COVID-19 is no longer a global public health issue. And now the government's focus has been shifted towards leveling up the economy, and this has motivated us to evaluate the performance of retail and business centers with footfall as the performance measure. And we have used mobile phone data set to derive footfall of residents, workers, and visitors based on home detection results and the individual activity patterns. here I present the case study of the City of London. And as you can see in this line graph, it shows 4 weeks of daily overall footfall in the City of London over 4 years. And we can see from the graph that there was an immense plunge of footfall when the COVID hit the UK. And as of the February of 2023, the footfall level hasn't recovered to its previous pre-pandemic level. Well, and we also calculate the proportion of residents, workers, and visitors. And here's the result. And we have some interesting discoveries. And one of them being that we found that Londoners tend to work from home more on Mondays and Fridays. And interestingly, the media has reported that the people who only go to the office on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are referred to as twats. And this is an important change of the Londoners' working patterns. And we also studied the important urban areas of London, which is High Street. And we applied time series clustering of weekly footfall to uncover the varied responses and resilience of different high streets. And the lower left figure shows the cluster results where we can see very different patterns, very different temporal patterns, where cluster 1 showed greater resilience during the first national lockdown, but it didn't recover well in the latter phase of the pandemic. And in contrast, cluster 2 and 3 were hit hard during the first national lockdown, but they bounced back really fast and they recovered well, generally, relatively better. And by plotting them on the map, we can show that high streets located at the periphery of the city tend to recover better than those closer to the city center. And I think this may be due to that people work from home more now, and they no longer need to travel to central area of the city, so that contributes to the increase of the footfall of local high streets. And we also study nighttime economy, which is of utmost importance to the prosperity of the local region. And here again, we use the footfall data and we look at the footfall during nighttime. And we have discovered the best and the worst recovered high streets with respect to nighttime footfall. And we also plot this map and to show their geographical distribution. And I think this is valuable information to local councils to make more targeted plans to help them maximize the economic values generated from nighttime activity. And this work has been done by myself and master's student, our MSc student, Josh. And now, next I'll pass to my colleague, Andrew. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Banjo. My work focuses on the customer profiling. In order to provide a personalized experience to customers, it's essential for shopping centers to understand its customer base and their social behaviors. Building a well-developed customer profile is essential for improving marketing efficiency. And nowadays, most shopping centers use footfall or survey to understand its customer behaviors. But both methods can become consuming, costly, and labor-intensive. So we tried to create a customer profile using mobile apps GPS datasets. We focused 4 research questions. Where are they from? How long do they stay in the mall? And how do they come to the mall? And the pattern of the return visitors. By understanding the origin place and the average dwell time of customers, the mall can plan its regional marketing policy. And by knowing that what kind of transportation mode to the mall, the mall can plan the parking lots and place advertisements along the tube lines where the customers take more rides. and understanding the visiting patterns of the different kinds of customers, the more can keep track of the operations and obtain effective information for staffing and targeted marketing activities. We chose the 2 Westfield shopping malls in London as our case study area. The first 2 images show the results of the analysis of where customer from. We can see that people tend to shop at malls that are closer to them. In Westfield Stratford City, the customers are almost from East London, and the customers of the Westfield London are almost from West London. And the largest proportion of customers are from the NSOA where the mall is located. And these 2 images show the results of the travel mall statistics of the Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. The largest proportion of customers came by car, and we can see that the number of customers of Westfield Stratford City is much greater than that of Westfield London, partly because of the different size of the malls, difference of the mall size, and there is a significant spike during lunch and dinner hours. In Westfield London, this spike occurs at 1:30 p.m. and 2 p.m. at lunch hour, and 5:30 p.m. and 6 p.m. at dinner hours. And in Westfield Stratford City, this peak only occurs at dinner hours. And we also detected the original place of people who came to the at Westminster Abbey to pay their respect to the Queen. We can see that the closer the area to the queuing site, the more people went to pay their respects. And the areas such as Birmingham and the Cornwall and Wiltshire, although further away from the Westminster Abbey, but more people come to pay their respects, indicating the people from these areas have a deeper affection for the Queen. That's all from my side. Next, I will pass to my colleague Cheng.
Hello everyone, thanks for coming. And after long discussing about geospatial science, let's discuss about something about natural language processing and the language model. This is about real-world application. And as you know, in the recent years, there's increasing research interest and growing market for the conversational system. And for example, most of you come from China. You know, in China we have Tian Mao Jinling, Xiaoai Tongxue, and in the UK we have Amazon Alexa, Apple Siri. So we have a lot of market product for the conversational system. So this is why our Professor Tao and our SpaceTimeLab chose to work with Amazon to build this intelligent system. Okay, let's go into details. For example, the task we want to solve is we really want to build an intelligent system that can help users solving like a cooking or DIY task. For example, if you want to cook like a pizza and you don't know how to do this, and it might be very complicated if you like search online. So if you have our device, you can directly talk to, let's say, hey Alexa, how to make a pizza, and then Alexa will, let's say if we have a screen, it will show you pictures and several steps and provide you some instructions how to do this. And for another example, if your monitor is broken, we can say, Alexa, how to fix a monitor, so you don't have to search online. So we can make your life much more easier if we have this kind of intelligent system. This is our long-term goal. So we are very proud. We are one of the 10 teams selected from more than hundreds of university teams. So we are a very nice team. So let's go into details. So this is how we exactly implement them. So we have 3 steps. So for example, in the first step, we have natural language understanding part. And for the next part, we have response generator. And in the third part, we generate some user feedback. and which will help us to improving the system like iteratively. So in the first part, I can give you some examples of why we need to really have this natural language understanding module. For example, we need to identify whether this task is dangerous. If the user say how to make a boom, so this is very dangerous, we have to immediately reject this. For another example, if the user say how to suicide, so our system must be able to identify this kind of this task. This is very important for us. And after we identify, for example, the user intent and what kind of task is going to perform, we will have like the second step, where we generate the response. You can see here we have like a lot of response generator. For example, user want to chit chat with you. You need to like able to discuss with user by using some built-in language models. And for example, user just want to perform task, and maybe user just want to ask for help. So you need to able to respond all kind of like queries. So we have a lot of generator, and after we generate all this response, we will have ranking strategy. We select the most proper response, and we like give it back to the user. And then user will feel happy or not. We can do some like annotation. We can do some additional analysis and help us to improving our system. So this is how we do this. So please allow me to, this is all of project. I will transfer to my colleague, Zhu Hui. She will introduce about medical conversational system. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Zheng Xiang, for the very exciting presentation. Well, next, we have to our another conversational system. Manley built this one in the medical domain. Well, nowadays, as we can see, the knowledge entry prediction is quite popular among general language. However, how to extract and also link the symptoms from the layman language to the SNOMED-CT, for example, this kind of medical knowledge graph, is still a very challenging task. For example, as we can see from this medical dialogue, the patient described his symptom like he has a sore throat. Here, well, we can see the symptom of the sore throat is corresponding to the terminology which is hoarseness in the SNOMED-CT knowledge graph. Therefore, our research question mainly focuses on how to combine the structured and also the unstructured information sources to answer users' queries in the medical domain. And therefore, we have some contributions for this project. The first contribution, we built a dataset, which consists like 2K symptom entities from the medical dialogue system to the SNOMED-CT. Well, the SNOMED-CT is a widely used knowledge graph in the medical domain. And for our another contribution is we proposed a ranking model. Mainly adapts the covert for the efficient prediction, and also including query using the BERT and also the gene separately. That's all about our system, conversational system in the medical domain. And based on the experiment results, this kind of system can highly improve the accuracy of the treatment as well as the diagnosis to the patient. And meanwhile, this kind of system can also provide valuable insights into the healthcare management system. I think that's all about the business intelligence part. Next, I'll pass to the safety and security part.
Thank you. Right, for this tip, we believe that citizens have right to feel safe and secure in their daily life. So we work with multi-scale and multi-source spatial temporal data to understand and predict risks with case studies in crime and road safety. So I will pass to Haworth to present his current work.
Okay, thanks, Fang. And hello, everyone. My name is Haworth, and I can present my current work related to the spatial temporal deep learning models for the accurate and reliable traffic risk prediction. And currently, we encounter two major challenges in this prediction. The first one is that we can see from the this map. This is inner London. This represents the risk distributions around the 2019 in inner London. It is spatial temporally. unevenly distributed. And also, based on that, we can say the bar chart show us there's a large portion of the roads which has no risk happened. So it causes a zero inflation issues. But how do we incorporate these two? Challenges? Firstly, we focus on how to make an accurate prediction. So we incorporate the constructive learning method, which is the unsupervised learning method, and distinguish the positive samples and negative samples. We will learn from the positive samples and push out from the negative samples in the representative learning processes. But in here, around the urban, we don't have that picture. So we modify this constructive learning to the spatial temporal, spatial cross-level graph constructive learning, which means we recognize the geographic heterogeneity and homogeneities, which is based on the region social demographic information within the urban elements features within these regions. So we break these regions' boundaries to foster some fake regions, which can be the negative samples, and the positive samples will be the real regions and the urban elements features. And we did the prediction, and we can see that also this is a case study within the inner London. We can say our model could perfectly or clearly capture the most risk areas, and this is for the accuracy part. But deep learning model, we always know that it is output the mean value of the predict right values. But how do we rely on this kind of model? So we, based on these reliable ideas, we'll further look into the risk data itself. So in the risk data in 2019, the risk data itself also have some uneven distributions, not only for the zero inflation, but also the over disparitions. We can see a large portion of minor injuries, so which caused about the electoric uncertainties. Based on these uncertainties, the traditional Gaussian distribution of the graph neural network doesn't work. That is not suitable here. So I just want to highlight our innovations. Based on the whole framework, we incorporate of the Tweedy distribution. Tweedy distribution is the compound Poisson and gamma, which will perfectly capture this over distribution, over disparitions. And also, we have the zero inflation parameter. So we forced a zero inflation Tweedy distribution with 4 parameters at the parameter encoder. Based on this encoder, we could have the predict risk values distribution of each row. So that means we have a finer level distribution, a finer level predict results. And each row is going to have the predict intervals. We could say that whether the true risk value will be within these intervals or not. And based on the prediction interval, we can see that whether this predict result is reliable or not. Okay, this is all from my side, and I will pass my. Sorry. Okay, I will pass the work to Mei Hui, who will present her presentation on computer vision. Thank you.
And we also extract some objects like the cycling facilities and different road users. So based on this process, we are able to check the different objects across different frames in the video. After that, we are able to detect the risky events, such as the overtaking behavior, the near and miss behavior. So from this video, we could see that the blue car is overtaking the cyclist. The red bounding box shows that it's an aggressive overtaking behavior because it is too close to the cyclist. And also another figure, we are able to extract the object and the physical environment at the same time, so we can understand the interaction between the road users and the background information. So that's all about my work. We hope in the future we could improve the road safety based on this process and encourage more people to cycle in London.
So that's all for my part. I will pass on to my colleague, Patrick.
Hi, thank you. I'm Nachapon. Right. So my work is focused on how to analyze traffic accident in Thailand, which is one of the cities that challenged with incomplete, unavailable, or underreported data. Like, for example, for the accident records, we don't even have any reasons why accidents that happened. We have only latitude and longitude with timestamps. Moreover, the GIS dataset is not available. We don't even know which street has speed limit and like how fast they can drive on that street. So with current work with Mui Hui, we propose another framework developing visual language model in order to understand what's going on the street. So here's the data that I collected in Bangkok using GoPro Max mounted with a helmet. As you can see, there are so many surroundings, like motorcycle. They're trying to overtake you, whatever is going on the street. So we trying to get ease. We trying to develop the image to text models and the video captioning models in order to get the set of text on the static and dynamic objects. And then we will improve the large language model and fine-tune it with traffic codes or whatever that policymaker can suggest to understand the risks. Thank you.
Thank you, Nashwan. Thank you, everybody. So that's just a, well, hopefully quite quick overview of what we've been doing recently in SpaceTimeLab. Just one quick clarification for the eagle-eyed amongst you. That blue car was not close passing the rider. That was just a demonstration of the technology. You notice they were in the bus lane and the rider was in, sorry, the rider was in the bus lane and the car was not. Anyway, so that's just a small clarification. But so I wanted to conclude this session. I know we're kind of eating into the coffee break a little bit because we started a little bit late and we had a few technical issues. But I wanted to thank all of our PhD students and researchers again because most of them are here today. Some of them are away doing important work like attending conferences and internships. But as you see, I've put the three of us academics at the bottom because the PhD students are the ones who really do all of the real good work in the lab. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be presenting this work today. So I'd like to thank them again. And we won't have any questions now, but if you want to have a chat with them in the coffee break and find out more about their work, please do so. So thank you to our team. Okay, so now we're going out into the foyer area, and there'll be coffee, and we'll be starting again in about 20 minutes.
Yeah. Closer. Yeah.
Even more. Is it back again?
Back.
That's it.
Yeah, listen to him.
That's good. Okay, right, one more. No, this is a test. Okay. Okay. Really, look, hang on. Lovely. All right, so big smile, please. Great. Good. Can I have a wave?
Come on, let's just go.
Okay, give a wave. Great. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
But I'd like to please, if possible, introduce our panel. We have Mr. Andy Evans from TFL, and we get a round of applause. Chris Gale from the Ordnance Survey. Officer international statistics. Can't take me. You did respond to my request for your bio, so. Yeah, think about it.
We can adopt you.
Dr. Olga Feldman from Arcadis. And Professor Washington Cheng from Imperial. We're going to be having some rapid fire questions. I have the questions on my phone, so I'm not tweeting. I'm looking at the questions, just in case anyone was worried. And I guess if we could have everyone go through and very briefly do maybe 2 sentences on what their work is and how you would say that this relates to AI and smart cities.
I'm Manley. I work for Transport for London on the road side of the business. Our job is to take in data, host it, transform it, turn that into business intelligence and improve the operation of the road network. And to that end, we've been doing some really innovative work like building a real-time digital twin for the London road space, and that's how we connect into AI.
Hi, yes, I'm Chris Gale from the Office for National Statistics. So my sort of job, it doesn't necessarily explicitly sort of go into this field, but it's kind of enabling others to kind of understand where AI applications could be used in the future. So just for example, ONS is more than a census, which many people might know ONS for, but there's also other applications of data that ONS is responsible for, and actually turning that data into insights is one of the sort of future goals and missions of the office to kind of enhance that ability to make decisions across government. So hopefully that will make more sense in the answers given. If not, you can ask me afterwards, I'll give a bit more detail.
Well, hi, my name is Olga Feldman. I'm representing Arcadis. It's a Dutch company. We are huge. We are a design engineering company, and as a result, we are using AI in many fields, including design, first of all, engineering, secondly, but we are talking more also about the asset management. Asset management you can see everywhere. You can see that in cities, you can see outside of cities, and the use of AI in asset management is one of the areas. Another one is obviously around advisory. We've heard here about the advisory side. We are supporting different banks with that, and this as well. And there are many other areas, and I don't want to forget transport because I'm directing transport. So obviously, modeling is a huge area, and I think we know as approaches in using AI in the future will be one. And I also want to mention that I started my career as a researcher in forestry, and I thought, like, if I now go back, I would probably use AI in forestry. So maybe there is someone who is interested. Very, very happy to talk about that as well.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here. Let me start by congratulating Tao and James. I thought it was excellent. I was just saying that I've known Tao forever. Well done. I have a problem. Let me start. Sorry to start a bit negative, but I do have a problem. My problem kind of is to do with sustainability. So obviously we are in the business of providing service to meet demand of all sorts, transport and so on. But then we have these constraints which have to do with safety, security, environmental impact, and so on. And so within that context, I'm also thinking about, you know, a whole of society approach, which is to do with looking at things in an integrated way. An example is a city scale, hence, you know, sustainable smart cities. So the problem I have is that this is really hyper complex, and those mathematicians among us, Professor Haley case here, is that there is a potentially quite a huge challenge in dealing with bigger than big data sets, heterodox, of all sorts of levels of uncertainty. I'm trying to bring all of that together to be able to, you know, come close to how those various other complex components would work together to be able to then claim that we can do something in the sustainability equation is the problem I have. And what I'm hoping is that AI could help me in that regard. The second point to make is that I also worry about misuse of AI from that perspective as well. So on the one hand, we want to develop techniques, analytics, and so on. We want to apply, but also just make sure that it's not misused. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to propose we go right on from that question, because I think that goes into one of the questions I wanted to ask. So there's various ways in which it could be misused, AI. There is the sort of intentional misuse, there's accidental bias built in, but then there's also the great sin of overfitting, which I think a lot of us maybe flirt with. So how can we make sure that the models that we're building, the way that we're running analysis, how can we make sure that we are extracting meaning and understanding rather than effectively redoing sort of shallow copies? How do we do interpretation and knowledge rather than sort of, I'm calling them shallow facts. And I'm inclined to say we're going to go directly back again, yeah. So you have time to think, Andy, but you're on the spot.
Yeah, because I've spoken a lot, let me just take half a minute to say. One of the jobs that I have, in addition to being head of department, is also I'm the director of Imperial's Institute for Security Science and Technology, and we are very much working in the area of secure the use of AI, so trying to prevent misuse. I can say a bit more later on in terms of preparing, but there needs to be, we need to bring things together, not just, as I said, developing the analytics, because I don't hear people talk about the analytics enough. There's a lot about application. And because some of the analytics is not very well developed, that may also lead to misuse. And you're very right in saying there is unintentional misuse as opposed to also malicious unintentional. So we need to care for all of that. So those of us who are working in the security discipline need to come together with the rest of us to make sure that that side of it is also developed.
Can you give me a very brief example of a malicious use?
Well, there have been, so for example, I've also worked in positioning navigation and timing systems. We suffer from interference of signals that can emanate from space. Spoofing is one of them. And the spoofers also are developing their expertise. And now they've started using AI to spoof in a way that is terribly stochastic. They know what it is. It's deterministic to them, but stochastic to us. So that makes it very difficult. A very good example of misuse of AI.
I think I would be probably more interested to talk about not the misuse, but the errors which we are sometimes making. Quite often we have quite a lot of data. We don't necessarily fully understand what we have. And when I used to work for Transport for London, and I had many requests for data, people say just give us the data, we'll try to figure out what exactly we want later on. And I say, no, please tell me what is it which you want to figure out first, and we'll see whether the data can support it or not. So I think sometimes we don't understand the data, and perhaps we can either, well, maybe we don't have a substantial sample size in order to build our model, obviously in which case we need to increase this. In some cases we have a huge sample size, but not necessarily of relevant data, in which case we may need to reduce that noise in data first of all before we build the model. In some cases we train the model too much, so there's a question of what is the right way forward. We don't want to overtrain the model, because then, as a very common issue that you can always hit, for example, specific function with a specific equation. You just need to put enough variables there, and you would have a perfect fit. Very similar, you can get an outcome with AI. You can overfit the model very, very easily. So you need to stop at some point, and maybe perhaps to use a few different algorithms, to different approaches, split your data. There is more than kind of one way forward how we can overcome it. But I think my advice would be to not build a very complex model which you don't understand. That sometimes is a key issue. Try to build something which, I don't want to say this word fit for purpose, as something which we kind of used to talk a lot about, especially Transport for London, but it needs to be right. It's much easier to say than to do, but yeah, don't overcomplicate the situation. Try to build the model which you understand, and try to build the model using the data which you understand as much as you can. Whether using AI, whether using multi-color simulation, whether using standard techniques, a different question, but just try to do it with some understanding of what exactly you're doing.
Thank you. I'm going to take a slightly different perspective on the question. So, taking a step back, I would say that it's really obviously very important that you know what you're doing. So the sort of democratization, sort of more widespread adoption of AI clearly affords opportunities, but also presents some issues. Just because you can get a good answer from asking ChatGPT does not make you an expert unless you know what you're doing. So building that capability is fundamental. It's kind of part of my role in ONS is to kind of build capability, in particular more about geospatial skills, but the same sort of idea. But just because you know what buttons to press doesn't necessarily know. Just because you know what buttons could press doesn't necessarily know which order to press them in, that kind of thing. So an example would be not knowing what to do. I was thinking of this on the train up as like a good sort of analogy, and I was thinking, oh, I remember the time when I was at school, I was doing French homework. So this would have been like the dawn of the internet as it was widely becoming sort of in use in households, sort of like late 90s, early noughties. I had some French homework and I had to do an essay for 200 words, and I was rubbish at French. So what I did was I wrote the essay in English, and then I just went to one of those early websites and translated it into French, and submitted it. Unsurprisingly, my teacher was not that impressed because it basically made no sense. But obviously, I had no idea it made no sense because I couldn't speak French. I put something that made perfect sense to me in and got complete rubbish out. It's not, and that is kind of the same thing. If you're doing things without fully understanding what you're doing, so kind of building on your point as well, in terms of fundamentally flawed at the start, and it's all great. You can do the most complicated models or whatever it might be, but if you're fundamentally lacking that basic understanding and knowledge of what you're doing, let alone what you're trying to achieve, you're always going to be doomed to fail. So it's great that obviously more opportunities, it's building, and there's more things to do, there's more roles in the workplace, there's more opportunities to adopt it, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should be doing it just because you can. You should be fundamentally taking a look back, take a step back, and actually understand this is appropriate for my needs, what else is being done. So it's not just a case of it's a cool word in town. It's new. We've had those buzzwords come and go in the past. Just because we'll do something else in the future, bear that in mind. So it's all about that capability moving to me and making sure. And that can. I don't want to allude to any future questions. There's final points I could make on that, but I'll leave it there for now.
I will point out to any students in the audience that was bad academic practice to put your essay into the translator. So don't do that. That is now forbidden.
I was 15 at the time. So.
Yeah. I'm continuing my campaign of bullying.
Google is much better now, but maybe it should be impressed.
Yeah, well, exactly.
I'm going to come back to Washington's open statement, which is basically his observation about how complex the world is. Because in my space, roads are an exact microcosm of that complexity. It's just layer on layer of dynamic interactions happening that we want to understand. And so while I claim to have built a digital twin of the road space and I can reflect situational awareness of what's happening, what I really need to do is actually understand why and what those interactions are. And what that leads is the understanding, actually, I have holes in my data. I don't have enough flow data to explain the outcomes, the changes in journey time, etc. The other thing that's clear in my mind in order to deal with this complexity is we need frameworks. We need frameworks of organisation of our thinking about how that road space happens. In the digital twin, I built a framework based on a Neo4j graph database, which we introduced in a presentation. But what's quite clear is if you don't have that framework, you haven't thought through yourself how those interactions happen and what the cause effect is. Coming back to what other people on the panel are saying, you can't reflect back that you actually really understand what your model might be saying to you. And a perfect example of that is that we have built a model based on Strava data. Strava data is a biased sample of cycling across London. We've tried to build a Strava uplift model that basically takes in observations from real-time cycling, plus other factors that might unbias the Strava data, like income level is an example of something we put into the model. And then I've got a model outcome, and I'm thinking, actually, how do I validate this really? You know, for the first time I've built a complex, you know, an outcome. How do I validate this? So, you know, it would be so easy for me to throw it out into the world and say, how brilliant, you know, look at what we've done. But actually, no, you know, I'm going to step back and actually think back, approach it with another model. Does that come back with a similar result? And I think we just have to employ that scientific building up of our understanding in how we come to, you know, validating this approach, you know, and if we don't understand it, the AI certainly isn't, is my view.
No, I mean, so I might cruelly, oh, yeah, probably. That is actually, I'm loud, but not that loud. So I think it's interesting the range of things you guys have reviewed, and there are a few things I am going to touch on. But I'm maybe, Andy, going to dig into further what you've just said there with the idea of the need for frameworks. And also your experiences. I'd love for the other panelists to also talk about whether they have sort of successfully employed AI. I mean, we've been talking, you know, I remember people talking about AI when I was an undergraduate, so it's been around for a hot minute, and it's been used in a few contexts, and I would love to hear more about where has it been used and how successfully has it been used. What's worked, what hasn't, and how has that changed the way it developed? And Andy, I know you have those experiences in TFL, having built things with it, so please, tell me more.
I would like to say we're great AI users and, you know, machine learning models, but the reality is that we're just at the beginning of that journey. Is the reality I have to play back to you. So the way I sort of think about it is, how might I think of employing AI? What would I do in the business if I had the opportunity? So on one side of it, we've got sensors on the road network. You know, how is AI being deployed using those sensors? Now, I've got AI-based digital cameras that we've had out on the road network for 2 or 3 years now. That's revolutionising our view of modal, you know, how road space is utilised. We just don't have enough at the moment. I've got 148. I need a stratified, you know, representative sample, but, you know, we're getting there. Exciting development. We're looking at using radar-based sensors. So that's using training sound waves using AI, because essentially that's cheaper and more robust. So that's something we're looking to validate this year. Where would I think about employing AI? I would definitely think about employing it in terms of the data onboarding and the data cleansing, because the amount of time that's spent doing that job, essentially there's huge volumes we've got. Your results are only as good as what comes in, and therefore you need to basically employ tools to keep your data, you know, on site to clean it up. That's where I would think about doing it, because essentially I've got volumes and volumes of data I've not even opened yet or looked at. And is it any good? You know, can I use AI to alert me to the fact that there's patterns in this that just don't make sense? You know, so that's an application. And then there's the applications that I began to talk about in the digital twin. We have built a graph database. I think that's the future now for solving complex problems. Understanding a graph database is brilliant, but the graph database works well when you put it on top of a framework, and in that framework you discussed and thought through how you're going to align your data. You have to align all your data sets, you know, to find some common geography. You then have to think through what are all the bits that I want to do. So I approach this from the point of view, let's go around the business, find all their requirements, get down to the very lowest granularity of data, make that as an input to the twin, make the suppliers supply the data already programmed so the digital twin can pick it up, it knows how to organise it into that graph database. That's one of my key giveaways I'm going to give you now as a technique I've used to make a digital twin work. You know, so again, that's come back to a framework. This graph database doesn't work unless you've thought about how you want to put your algorithms together to answer the business problems, and you need to have thought through a framework. So there's a fair bit of strategic thinking needs to come through to make this work. And then the last thing is what else am I thinking at the moment? Well, I have some data sets that are basically not robust. We would like to have a very good quality-based demand layer for all modes across all of the, so I've got this framework of 65,000 links on the road network. I would like to have for every mode, every link, I'd like to have information on flows and journey times and occupancy and trips. So those are the main components of what goes into the framework. But to do that, I've got sparse data. How do I bring that together? So one of the things I'm actually engaging with is I'm engaging some academics at Switzerland, who have some of these skills to put together, using neural network thinking, to put together what I would call a synthetic data set. So just grasping, definitely need to lean into academia, can't do it without them. And the other thing is, what's my limitation? I've already pointed out there are holes in the data sets and we need better quality data and inputs and better thinking on the frameworks. Other than that, it's not enough skilled people. The private and some of the public sector like TfL can't afford to pay for data scientists to come and do this work. So maybe leaning into academia for more support is some of the way to go.
Yeah, sure. If I may. Sure. I would like to make two short statements, actually. First of all, when talking about artificial intelligence, I think there is a parallel with human intelligence, because the counterpart is artificial stupidity. And how do we separate the two? At least I can tell you that in the Netherlands, the Dutch government is very clever in making use of artificial stupidity and making wrong policy lines based on computer outcomes of models which they do not check and which have wrong premises. That's one. You might have heard about the farmers' riots in the Netherlands earlier this year and then last year. The farmers' riots were based on outcomes, on calculations on the emissions of nitrogen from farms and the deposits of nitrogen on natural vegetation areas. The models behind it were very good. I know them. I worked in Wageningen agriculture. I know the people who worked on it. These were good models. What went wrong was communication. Because the outcomes of these models were represented on a map of the Netherlands on an A4 paper, so on small scale, and were completely misread. First by government on how to use the information, second on farmers on what they thought were the effects for them. So however clever your models are, if your communication is not in order, things will go completely wrong. And if I understand here that most of the work you're doing are to support government policies, I think this is one of the main issues, much more than the complexity of your models.
So, Chris, you're in government as a trade. But yeah.
It's a similar story where it's not necessarily how we could be using it or how we are using it, but how we could be using it in the future. So ONS is in a sort of unique position in that we're the civil service, but we're not like reporting to a minister. We are doing effectively, we're enabling the release of data, census, but also other releases. So just an example of where I this is on a personal view, would like to sort of see AI be sort of adopted and sort of add context to what we do. So I think anyone else in this country, so this time last year, will know that there's a very vast temperature difference currently. As we had a heat wave, we had temperature of 40 degrees for the first time, things of that nature. Now that actually led to ONS releasing a sort of ad hoc release to do with mortality related to the heat wave. Now this was a very, if you read the methodology, it was put together quickly, but it was also simplistic in its nature due to many factors. But effectively, a heat wave, as soon as the Met Office declared a heat wave, those days were the days that were a heat wave. We then used our data that we collect on death registrations. Effectively, anyone that died on those heat wave days was basically looking at the increase impacts on health, on mortality, on temperatures. Now that was basically as far as it went. It didn't look at the sort of the shoulder period either side, or other contextualization to do with local areas. Clearly, heat is not continuous in the sense of that, say, temperature for London is not the same, despite what weather apps tell you. There is variation to be found in certain areas. And that, what I would like to see is AI contextualizing those spatial variations and other components that basically impact outcomes, health outcomes, which is clearly important to understand. And then actually you can start seeing how that can then feed into policy ultimately. Because effectively you're seeing that heat, particular areas in this instance where there's areas of particularly high heat, i.e. they're not near green space or blue space. How does it impact future house building, for example, or intervention that could take place to basically prevent this happening in the future, or as happening as dramatically in the future? And it's that kind of that piece where effectively it's finite resources to do things. Can we then lean on other resources that can automate and will potentially help add that context to what we do, basically make a better story, which ultimately feeds into policy decisions, because that is really what, from my perspective, we want to be making better decisions on things that we're providing the source data, and that's, to me, is a really positive use of the technology to kind of, and it's, again, doing something that you could do if you basically chuck enough resource at it, but as we know, anyone in government will know, resources are very much a fickle thing that is not, you can't just, you have to be creative of how you use it to basically get the best outcome possible. That's one example. There's many more I could talk about, but that's the one that jumps to mind at the moment.
Quite a lot has been said already, so I don't think I have a lot to add. But just maybe perhaps a few recent examples which I personally experienced. Just over a year, I've been an expertise European Commission on one of the projects, which is an international project. And one of the small parts of that project is to develop a pilot in Flanders and to build a digital twin and to look at some of the sustainability indices and improving the quality of life, which is Arcadia's aim as well. And I thought that sometimes you think about a digital twin, and that's exactly what they built, and you think that's they replicate the city, etc. But not necessarily. Sometimes those techniques, AI and others, they can help you with perhaps improving the quality of life of many individuals. So sometimes you don't really think where exactly to put a bench. You can just make a very quick decision where to put it, but actually you can make it much more informative if you look, for example, at how the sun goes around, where there is a tree, where there is a shade being produced for periods of time, where, for example, there is a drinking fountain, what kind of distance, say, people with limited mobility can walk, etc., and then try to sort of optimize your decisions. And that was one of the ideas of that project, that pilot project. And I really like it. Just perhaps we can use it more to improve the quality of life of individuals in our cities. And just thinking about Arcadias, we also use AI, as I said before, in quite a number of areas. And one of those is around the design and design, say, building design of floors, etc. And I thought perhaps it can be used even more in designing cycling highways, etc., because sometimes you spend quite a lot of time in trying to come up with the right design. Having said that, there are lots of regulations, so you need to be very careful that you just don't over-design it, because you still need to satisfy quite a number of rules.
Yeah, so a lot has been said. I just want to make a philosophical point, which is very close to what you said earlier. Which is that one of the challenges we have is also just bringing the different stakeholders together so that we make good policy decisions. But please, let's use AI to help us address challenges that humanity faces, as opposed to using it willy-nilly for everything. I just say that, artificial intelligence should be looked at next to natural intelligence. Because what we're trying to do is to bridge that gap, and hence my point about the complexity of the challenges that we face. I think that's where AI actually belongs. I may be wrong about this, but I think a gentleman who was quite pivotal at Google in AI decided to leave because he was very, very worried about this thing that has been unleashed that could be terribly misused. And as we said earlier, the misuse at various levels. So let's really just use it where it is absolutely needed to address those potentially existential threats to humanity. As an example of what I've just said at Imperial, I work in navigation systems for safety critical operations, such as gate-to-gate operation of an aircraft. And one of the things that we really need to understand is the distributions from which our errors come from, so that we can be able to break the gap between safety and availability of service. So what we tend to do as engineers is we use these simple, elegant Gaussian models, and then we put a huge safety factor. Or most of you are too young to remember Donald Rumsfeld. There's so many unknown knowns or unknown unknowns and all these sorts of things. But if we can determine the distribution, whatever it is, from which a measurement error comes from, that problem will be solved overnight. One, the complexity of the data types, the uncertainties, the various, you could be walking through 25 different distributions in a space of 1 hour. We want to find them, and we think AI could help us. Now that would be a true revolution. So that's an example of an area where it could help. Thank you.
All right, so in the interest of time, I'm going to say this is actually our last question, but I think that you guys might have a bit to say about it. One of the things that you guys have all touched upon, the importance of AI and the capacity to be supporting us in dealing with some of the existential threats we face. The availability, the ability to use it to do a lot of work, which we just don't have the resourcing to do. The ability to sort of replace certain laborious jobs. It's very important, it's very interesting. A number of you have identified a skills gap in terms of implementing it, the challenges of sort of bringing people together to understand and deliver these kinds of frameworks. Do you think, and you've spoken about academia's role in this as you understand it, and from each of your different perspectives, can we talk about this skills gap? Can we talk about whether how we can meet this need for people who can work with this, how we can actually deliver the kinds of things that we're talking about? Is there still a role for academia? Is a question that people have asked because so much of the development is happening in what I would call FANGs, the very well-funded tech companies. Is there still a role for us considering that, and what should that role be?
I hope the thing. Let me just say really quickly that the answer is yes. But may I suggest this concept of co-creation and collaboration amongst the stakeholders? Something along the lines of creating, ecosystems, where we call it a triple helix, but maybe it's a multi-helix kind of approach, where you've got government, academia, even the wider public getting together. And I was just going to kind of like to say that the Imperial College has created something called the Imperial X. So please Google it, the Imperial X. And it's based in White City, in the new campus, and it's exactly that. I'd like to remove Imperial from it and just call it X, so that everyone can come together and actually work together for the benefit of humanity. Thank you.
So, do you mind if I follow up then? So you're thinking that there should be specific organizations dedicated to setting that agenda, or to training people, or can you, what ought X to be doing?
Yeah, so I think what I'm saying is that government will be there.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the helix concept I was talking about. So government, academia, even civil society. Right? Of late, the UK government, through UKRI, is coming up with all these networks, hubs. A lot of them very much to do with AI, for example. We're not going with quantum and all sorts of things happening. I think that's a good way to go. Because the other philosophical point I have is that some of the ills that we have today is due to this kind of fairly embedded silo culture, where we're doing little things here and there without actually knowing whether those local minima could actually positively conspire to give us global optima, and the so-called local optima. Right? So I think coming together is a part of the solution.
I completely agree. I think we need to work all together, and I think there is a role for everyone, especially if we're trying to solve, kind of larger problem rather than to build a very, very small model. And I think one of the reasons why is because we have different points of view. So if we want to tackle a specific problem, we might come up as a team with different points of view, different experience, different skills, and express different opinions. And maybe none of us will be right, but together we will be able to come up with a solution. And I believe that's the approach which NASA is using. Sometimes when they don't know a solution to a problem, they just want to bring individuals from different fields and ask them exactly the same question. They answer differently, but then the truth is perhaps somewhere in between, and that's, I think, the way forward.
Imagine if my answer was no.
That would be exciting.
Well, it's not. So it's yes, but I think the reason why I say yes is maybe it's a slightly different perspective. Is to do with the different timescales that academia can work on. Luckily, I know there's pressures and there's pressures everywhere, but in terms of where, say, in the commercial, maybe the public sector, where decisions and things have to happen at pace, and maybe for different reasons, especially the commercial sector, where it's financial reasons to maybe do things. In academia, where you've potentially got more time to look into things and understand the problems and maybe pitfalls that might get overlooked or brushed under the carpet by other people looking to use AI. Just thinking in terms of like what effectively is a data issue, where data is, if you're putting data in and it's biased or it's not fully, doesn't represent the population, then ultimately it's going to lead to biased outcomes or outcomes that might look good but aren't for whatever reason. So having that kind of counterpoint to those kind of pressures where you have to deliver things, on a continual basis, where people can take back, do those studies, actually understand the more nuances and like basically things that the general public wouldn't necessarily appreciate, and really look into those issues and understand. Maybe and working again, you work with these providers or across it, whatever sectors, just to really understand what the implications of using this might be. And I don't think there's no better place necessarily than academia to do that. Rich history of basically taking that more holistic view, and it can be anything obviously from a PhD student to whatever above. It doesn't really matter. I think just having that literally the resource available, putting it into these problems, and then finding out these issues, and then how it can then be used more appropriately, and recommendations, and effectively working together then with the TFLs and how it might be in the world to basically embed that knowledge and understanding to make better decisions ultimately. And that's how you basically avoid the Terminator happening, which is ultimately what we should all be trying to avoid when it comes to AI. We want to live in a Terminator, less free world, so let's keep that up. We're doing all right at the moment.
So my answer is also a bit of a yes and a no. Yes, because I've always been embedded in academia in one way or another, my relationship with Professor Cheng goes back 15 years. Started working with that group back then, and we thrive on that exchange of ideas, and some of the things that we've been discussing and going whatever have now manifested themselves. They're embedded. They're in the tools that I'm delivering, and so I'm forever grateful for that collaboration. My no part of it comes from the perspective that I think we can develop better models for that collaboration. My experience shows that the American universities are much better at working with businesses and embedding themselves along businesses and delivering for businesses. And I do find that echoed in many of the UK institutes who basically have different motivations. They have motivations that are driven about publications and not necessarily, that collaboration of joining up and delivering for this. Well, it's what you would predict the societal greater good, and I think.
That's not a no. That's actually a yes.
Yeah, that is a yes, but I'm sort of saying we need a different way of working. Is where I'm going. Yeah.
It's a yes and.
Yes, and.
So we have 3 minutes before the end, before we're strictly notionally supposed to be closing. So I'm going to randomize it because I feel that Chris and Olga, being in the middle, have not been put on the spot as much, and Andy and Washington have gotten away with that a little. So I would ask, but you can volunteer between the two of you, which of you wants to go first. Give me maybe 30 seconds about what you guys would like to see out of the next year. What would you like people in this room to do? What would you be excited to hear if someone came to you at this sort of a meeting next year and said, oh, based after your talk I went up and did X? Toward the end of moving forward this. This was not on the set of prearranged questions, so I've really done you enough time this.
You make you think on the spot on. So I guess it's a continuation of the theme, like I said, I've been sort of talking about. It's that kind of like, not so much an off-the-shelf kind of like, here's something we thought about and here's how you practically apply. Effectively, you can cut out the thinking part from and basically operationalise it almost. That aspect of where if you could find a good use for it, you could think of an appropriate way to basically something could be improved by the use of AI, and this is how you do it. I want to have solutions, I just don't want ideas. That's kind of where I would be sitting, thinking from that perspective. But to understand, I want to know that it's it's a solution that actually does what it says on the tin kind of thing. It's not just going to be, oh, here's something that might do it because it worked in this sterile setting of with this lovely cleansed data set as meant in X, Y, and Z. It needs to show that it could actually it's worth my time. Which is a very harsh way of looking at it, but then that's kind of where we need to go. Time is a resource, and therefore best use of it is always important.
So when you say solutions, are you talking about code? Are you talking about all singing all dancing dashboard? Are you talking about you can call us up and we'll say, oh, here's the number is X?
It just depends on obviously the situation. But if it's the project different sizes, everyone knows. Things could be small, ad hoc, very quick, and agile to turn around. Although the other side of the scale seems to be years in the making. I could bore you silly about how some of the school of my team spent 3 years trying to work out how to do historical census stuff using old census maps to digitise them and basically all that kind of stuff. That is a very niche and a very practical example of effectively about doing that. You can't unlock small area statistics from the 1950 census, for example. But that's again a niche example where if you apply AI techniques which do exist to solve that problem, you're basically saving someone years of their life from doing something, which is, I've already spent 3 years doing it, I don't think they want to do it anymore, but that's one example, but again, the better, more sort of, maybe more impacts humanity in a slightly more wider way, but that's just, top of my head, on the spot, that's my idea.
What I would like to say is actually come up with your ideas and we'll try to solve them. I don't necessarily need the solutions, I need your ideas and we can work together and try to solve them. And there are 2 areas in particular which I would be immediately interested in. One is around the future of transport modeling. And I'm not necessarily talking about the real-time data and real-time models. I think that probably could be underskilled. But it could be more around the models which can be used in planning. So obviously we have lots of standard approaches right now, but I think we are moving slowly towards more sophisticated models, so please come up with your ideas about more sophisticated models because we have clients who are interested in developing such models. Please work with us. Another area is perhaps, I'm the framework manager of the Strategic Research and Economic Analysis Framework for Homes England, so we previously is on that framework with many other companies. And Homes England is interested in your ideas, in your research topics, which would help to solve the problems which they have. And we are talking about housing, we're talking about affordable housing in particular, we are talking about older population, we are talking about market failures, etc. Come up with your ideas to me. Let's discuss them. Let's see how the industry can support you. And we'll go to Homes England and propose those research topics, and we'll work together. I'm sure we'll solve them.
Should I have a 15 seconds? So what I really would like after this meeting is that everybody joins the SpaceTimeLab. And after you've done that, go and join Imperial X.
Really easy to say, I want to say, second them traveling 1,000 miles. So may I invite Professor Delaney first? So what also happened in the previous session, so Professor Delaney is a very, how to say, phenomenal figure in this field, not only in China, in the national stage, has been, of course, he has been the president of my university. He is the member of the Chinese Academy and member of the Chinese Academy of Engineering. So very unusual person. So I'm very privileged. Actually, has been studying 5 years with you, Delaney, and and in a way, because his wife is here, because in a way, they have the same age as my parents and the same age of their son, and my daughter the same age as their granddaughter. So in a way, they are kind of my second in a sense. So it really gave me lots of time. But the one thing, mention one sense he gave to me, how to be a good person and how to do studies. You say study as like playing pianos. So we focus on this piece of music, you focus on that, then you move to another one. So thank you.
I just use this opportunity to thank the Professor Cheng to invite me come to UK for the third time. The first time I knew UCA Professor Tomlinson with his Tomlinson Watch program. At that year, we still use the optical mechanical instrument to producing the aeroplane image. And that's my first impression to UK, because Professor Tomlinson came to Wuhan, meet my teacher, Professor Wang Zhizhuo. Wang Zhizhuo got his PhD in the year 1939, so they knew each other very well. And in the year 1991, I came here to visit UCL, also the whole England, even to the Scotland, to Southampton, many cities I visited, universities. And the third time, the second time was in the year 2007. I came here with my wife because I'm doing remote sensing and geospatial information. But my wife, she did corrosion engine photogrammetry, catch heritage, maintenance, and many such jobs. So at that time, Tao Cheng is just came here. I also a little worry about her. If she can work hard here, get some progress. Now, today, I know his number, that's SpaceTimeLab, with 10 years anniversary. So I'm very glad. So she works with many colleagues, many students. That is the teamwork ability realized. And also, just now we have the talk about the parallelism with the future AI and smart city. I remember as she learning with me together in the year 1994, we wrote a paper on Canadian conference called GIS. That means knowledge discovery from GIS basis. That was the first paper dealing with spatial data mining. Because my young brother, he got his PhD from the Edinburgh. He is computer science. And that time I was in Germany learning photogrammetry and remote sensing in Stuttgart University with Professor Ackerman. So, and my young brother and me training some young students with this topic, data mining, spatial data mining. We can use the AI method to do data processing, imaging extraction. Also, we should look for the high level using the AI from our geospatial sciences. That means we should find pattern, rule, and knowledge to support the people to make decision maker. Now, this is a smart city task. So we know that we have work with the geotemporal big data. That is the basic. If no big data, I think no AI in our field. We should get nowadays in Wuhan. We are doing the Noja set and the Noja let. Noja set is the big data set. Noja let, this is the deep learning software package. So, and also we are doing, and for the, in the year 2000 in the Istanbul, in your Amsterdam, ISPS Congress with the title, Geo Information for All. I still remember. How can you do spatial information for all? We should use spatial temporal data with the AI method to not only find information, but also to find knowledge. This is still the task. I hope, use this opportunity, I hope this university, this lab will make your more larger, more important contribution to this task. This is, of course, not only the one person task, this is our common task. In China, we are doing in Wuhan, we are doing from the GNSS, the GPS, Beidou, Canelo, and GLONASS. And also, we should do the ubiquitous PNT, positioning, navigation, and timing. Ubiquitous, from the outside into the inside, from the ground to underground, everywhere. And this is one task. The second task, we are doing remote sensing, not only in the, one by one. We should set the internet in the space. That the people can get the imaging very fast, very accurate, also very intelligent. This is also my work the couple days I talk here. We develop first remote sensing satellites can send the information to your mobile phone. The data processing is on board. Not normally we receive the data, we process the data, then we serve data to the end user. We should send this right data, information, knowledge to right person at the right time for right place. This is also my idea. I hope I'm already warned. The young generation sitting here, this is your task. I wish you make big progress in your teaching here in UCL. Also send all people to support her. Let she growing up. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I have privilege to invite my PhD supervisor, Professor Martin Molina. Martin also have a fantastic career. He has been a director of International Institute of Aerospace and Surveying, and which was managed with University of Canada. So I was very lucky to learn from Martin. So one thing I always told my students, I said I'm very lucky to have learned with the greatest mind in academic, as one showed in that. And another great friend, basically most of the students scare off you because his brain is so fast. And I think one thing I want to mention is Martin wants to say, it's this. He write down on the board and write as a formula. So that's what I'm trying to grasp. So you're learning of that. Martin, please.
I think it was about 1995, 96, I got a message from the director of the PhD program at the ITC, and there is a young Chinese lady, and she started a project, but somehow she needs some help. So I said, okay, well, let's talk. And there came in this young Chinese lady. Big smile, as always, and we started to talk about the problem. She wanted to do something on coastal management in the Netherlands. And you know, there is this problem of sand transports along the beaches and the dunes, and they wanted to monitor that. They set up a laser altimetry system to measure the heights of these beaches, and from there they want to know what the movements were. Well, this was basically the start of the problem of your thesis. When I see here that you're in the Department of Civil Engineering, Environmental Engineering, and Geoinformation Engineering, you covered all three in your thesis. It was coastal management, it was environmental management, and it was geoinformation processing. So we started working, and she had 1 year delay in the 4-year program almost. So we had to get going, and this went very fast. And we went through the problem, we discussed the issues, and we started modeling and see how to interpret this data. So after the discussion, she would work for a while, and then she would say, well, I need to talk to you. And okay, we made an appointment, and the usual issue was that she would come in with a big smile, and after about half an hour she went out with an answer. So for the young PhDs, if you want to get through your PhD program, then this is the style. Come in with a smile and leave with an answer. Okay, we worked like that. It went very fast, but then there was a hiccup. A very nice one, actually. Because in the meantime, Nancy came. So another half year lost from the PhD program. But Nancy came, and my wife and I went to visit Nancy, to visit Tau and see Nancy and hold her, and came for 2 wooden shoes. This is typically Dutch present. Now, I'm looking forward to tonight, because I understood that Nancy will be there. And Nancy will have the age down which Tau had when she came to ITC. So I'll see the young Tau back, and I'm looking forward. But of course, you cannot meet Nancy without the next present. And the successor of Dutch for the shoes is Dutch Calda cheese. So we hope now, Tau, there is much we can talk about what happened. We keep it short because we want to go on with the program. But I want to give you one thing. There was a, you know, maybe many of you know the famous Atlas Major from Blau. It was given, it was published in the 17th century. So far before we had computers and things, they were working on GIS in the Netherlands. There was a reissue of this publication some 10, 15 years ago. And I was looking it up for you to see whether I could find a chapter. That did not work, it was sold out. But I took one from my own library. It's a facsimile from the chapter about the Netherlands. And if you look through the atlas I give it to you, then you will find your project area as well on Ameland and north of the Netherlands, but much more. So I would like to give that to you in the memory of 10 years of your laboratory, but also of a long time knowledge.
Thanks, Martin. As you can see, PhD is not always smooth, right? But I've got a manager finish in 4.5 years, which is a long period because when I graduate, I go to my dissertation and also go to my daughter, who is, that's the story. Nancy is my daughter. You're going to see her tonight, okay? And so, thank you, Martin. And I want to invite Professor Wolfgang Katz. He's my second PhD supervisor. He's also have a very successful career. Now he's retired from University of Vienna. So what I learned from him, Wolfgang, so I come to UC of course because as Martin mentioned, I met Wolfgang first. So the things I learned from him is the regional spatial topologies anyone really study in GI science. That's your one of your very signature publications, so about the spatial topology. We did use a lot when I did the fuzzy list about the overlay of the things. So thank you so much, and welcome come from Mel, also flying here with his wife. So do you want to say a few words? I know we won't want to head along to, but yeah, be nice to say a few words.
Okay, I guess I can speak up a little bit. Can you hear me in the background? Okay. Thank you, Tao. Thanks for inviting me to come to your anniversary here, your 10th anniversary. I'm in particular pleased to see how you named your lab. You know, there is a huge fish in the pond of GIS that claims to do the science of where. I always said, why only where? What about when? So you have the SpaceTimeLab. That's good because you do it also time. And I'm also very happy to see how successful your lab has developed by listening to all the presentations of your students and graduates this afternoon. It was very enlightening to see how excellent your work has been, and of course I am confident that the next 10 years will be even more successful when your SpaceTimeLab will develop into some, let's say, Geo-AI lab for everyone. Not only for urban or smart cities, but for everybody. We are in the era of AI, that's in everybody's mouth at the moment. I think what we still need is what we had also in our panel discussion here. You can do a lot of nonsense with AI, and AI is not always intelligent. So it should be something for everybody, but it needs to be monitored or controlled, or it has to produce useful results. I always have an example with ChatGPT. I tested it out, since I'm the chair of the Austrian Cartographic Commission. I asked ChatGPT, tell me something about the Austrian Cartographic Commission. So it told me quite a lot of things, but one sentence, it is part of the Austrian Academy of Sciences, which is absolutely nonsense. So you have to be careful when you use these things. But I'm very, very much confident, and I am very proud that, as you know, you mentioned it perhaps, we have been working at ITC for quite some time, Martin, longer than I, of course. But it was about 10 years I was there, and I was happy to teach and to advise many students, and among them many Chinese students. And I'm very proud that many of these students made excellent careers, and you are a perfect example of that. So once again, I congratulate you to your achievements, and I wish you all the best for the next 10 years or many more years to come. Thank you.
I mean, I've been using it long enough, 17 years. I got my professorship in 2012, so it's also more than 10 years, okay? So I haven't done my inaugural address, but I hope this is actually the opportunity. I take the opportunity to really use this as a, because I'm so pleased to say, previously have 3 very important persons from our prayer here, and also I think my party was here a while ago. So really, and I have my really, most cooperated colleagues here as well, as I said, that they are very, and they are also very, esteemed scholars. So, and of course, it's all my industry partners, my colleagues from CASA, from Butler School, which joined the supervised PhD students, and also colleagues from Allen Institute, which will be probably a new chapter for my career as well. And so, I don't want to delay the coffee, but really thank you everyone. I really appreciate my supervisors. Please join me, give them another round of applause.
Session is in part in memoriam of Roger Tomlinson. Roger Tomlinson, very often called the father of GIS, progenitor of what became the discipline and the underpinning technology to geographic information science. And those of you that got in early may have had the chance to read this obituary of Roger, written by Jack Dangermond following his death in 2014. And in that obituary, Jack applauds Roger for many things, not least his sort of enduring contributions within achievements within GIS every year at the ESRI annual conference in San Diego every year. I'm not much of a lifetime achiever, but this is the only year I think I appeared in it very many years ago with several compatriots on the occasion of the publication of the first edition of our book. But we're not talking about that in global terms. We're talking about the coining of the term GIS and, in effect, the first book in GIS. And although this building has been rehabilitated and reworked a number of times since I appeared at UCL in 2000, there's a lot of history about GIS and GI technologies here in London's Global University in London. In fact, somewhere beneath my feet, I think, was the first server for the OpenStreetMap work that Steve Coast started whilst a technical assistant in CASA, which was also in the basement of this building for many years in the late 1990s and early 2000s. But of relevance to this session is, as I say, sort of Roger Tomlinson's PhD thesis, which accompanied his contribution to the Canada Geographic Information System, the first true GIS worthy of the name, which was concerned with the use of electronic computing, nevertheless, to investigate what we'd now think about aspects of data input, storage, manipulation, analysis, and overall quality assessment. And in actual fact, so the first book of in GIS is the one you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, which is Roger's PhD thesis, completed in UCL's Department of Geography, with under the tutelage of his supervisor. And this is a fairly old photo now, as you can probably imagine. Professor Peter Wood, who himself contributed quite a lot to early computer mapping in GIS, and the Department of Geography has historic CMAP maps of West Africa produced by the likes of John Adams and so on and so forth. So steeped in history, and for that reason, on one of the occasions when he gave a seminar here in about 2016, Jack Dangermond said that he wanted to establish the Roger Tomlinson Prize to be awarded to the best postgraduate dissertation in a GIS-related subject to be awarded on an annual basis. And Peter, befittingly, is the chair of the awards panel for that. And so GIS, as we know, is an interdisciplinary meeting place. In many respects, UCL is an interdisciplinary meeting place. And the Tomlinson Award, the Tomlinson Prize, and an associated prize, the ESRI Development Centre Prize, have been awarded on an annual basis to globally leading students who've been drawn from a range of different disciplines across UCL. And in 3 of the 6 or 7 years that the prize has been awarded, an awardee has been affiliated with the SpaceTimeLab. And so that's what we're going to hear in summary here. I am under orders from she that must be obeyed to keep everyone to 10 minutes, and I'm aware that the first person I'm going to introduce, Juanfa, has 20 slides, so I'm asking for a bit of Friday afternoon participatory slow hand clapping if he goes over the 10 minutes. But let me begin by introducing Associate Professor Juanfa Cheng, who completed his PhD in the SpaceTimeLab under the expert tutelage of Town Professor John Shaw Taylor from Computer Science. And I've asked each of the candidates to say something about how they ended up in the, what motivated them to come to the SpaceTimeLab, something about what the essence of their work has entailed, how it links both internally and externally to activities within the SpaceTimeLab, and how it fitted within that broader career objectives. A lot to say in 10 minutes, even without 20 slides. So over to you, Juanfa.
So we'll start from the story about string network and why we use string network in urban optimization. As we all know, the string network are kind of the natural basis for many activities in the urban environment. For example, it shapes how we perceive, how we navigate, how we move in the cities. And if we're able to use the string network in some of the optimization work, that will be great, because in that case, we don't have to consider about the size of the cells we're going to use, or kind of, are we going to use LSOA or MSOA, etc. Because the string networks, they're kind of well-defined, they're very clear, but they're not easy to use. So, the story started in 2014 when I started my PhD, and my PhD topic is part of the Crown Policing Citizenship led by Cheng at that time. And the key challenges in this project is that in London, we're facing increasing crimes and decreasing resources for policing. Therefore, we need kind of intelligent policing. But in reality, the policing, there are several primary issues. For example, they use the grid cells in the planning rather than the string network, and they rely heavily on the experience rather than the algorithms. And when the officers are doing the work, they are largely separated instead of being coordinated. So ideally, we would like to optimize how they police on the string network. And here we go. So in my PhD, I proposed 3 different strategies for this optimization for different time scales. In the long-term scale, we propose a method to divide the area into different patrol districts based on the string network, considering the crime risk, the compactness of the area, and the difficulty of patrolling this area. And this is quite efficient. We use the taboo search algorithms to tackle this computing problem. And on a daily basis, we want to tell the officers, if they're given a map of the crime hotspots, how they're going to divide their workload and to cover these areas very effectively. So here we propose an algorithm to enable them to, starting from different stations, to coordinate and to cover these areas in a very short time. And then the challenges here is the real-time coordination between different officers. This is because the officers, they're taking 2 different tasks when they're patrolling. On the one hand, they're patrolling the hotspots. On the other hand, they are required to respond to emergencies when needed. So we propose an agent-based modeling and online coordination algorithm to tell them how to patrol, how they are doing some work, and while others are doing the other piece of work. So this system is quite good. It's very efficient. but when we're talking with the mathletes, like, do you want to use these algorithms in your daily work? And their answer is like, well, we don't have a control center in our system. So that's the story of my PhD work. And then moving from my PhD, I have been working on two projects which is related to my PhD in a wider context and in different applications. And the recent project that I'm working on is trying to use the drones for policing to cover the hotspots or to respond to the emergencies very quickly. So there are many benefits of using drones for policing, right? They are cheap, they are very quickly, and they are kind of easy to deploy. But the issue is that the drones, they have a limited battery. So to use drones for policing, we need a lot of base stations or charging stations for them in the city to make sure that they can get charged when they are needed. So the research question in this project is about how we can optimize the location of the base stations to make sure that drones are they're supported or they can get charged when needed. And the other question is about the impact of the street network for the drone deployment. This is because in the city, the drones, there are many restrictions like about the movement of drones. They need to consider the street network, they need to consider the non-fly drones. So the question here is like, if there are different distance metrics for the drones, how does that impact the optimization of the base stations? And this project is in collaboration with Professor Sally Yang and Dr. Hong Li from Liverpool John Moores University. I guess they're here today. Yeah. So, to do this, we compare and investigated 3 different distance metrics for the drones for policing. They are the very simple 2D Euclidean distance for drones, and the other one is the 3D distance for drones. Like in the 3D distance, they're considering the height of the buildings and the hills. And the third distance metric is that we require the drones to fly on top of the street network instead of on top of the city buildings. This is because many people don't like the drones to fly on top of their houses due to the privacy issues or safety issues. And this is an illustration of the 3 different distance metrics for drones. And then we put these 3 distance metrics into the optimization of the base stations using the P-median model. And these are the 3 results from the P-median model. As you can see, the first 2 solutions using the 2D and 3D distance, they are quite similar, or they're identical in terms of the location and allocation of the base stations. And what is the most interesting here is the different solutions from the street network distance. As you can see, using this distance, there are more stations located in the northern part of this area, which is part of Liverpool City. This is because there are dense street network here, and also there is a river like in this part. So this paper is now currently under review by Applied Geography, and hopefully we're able to see this paper by the end of this year. Another project that I have been working on is about the allocation of the teachers to schools using a capacitated P-median approach. So this is based on the real application from the Institute of Education. So each year, the IOE, they need to assign 800 student teachers to the schools in London. And the objective of this assignment is to minimize the total traveling cost of the students. In previous years, they used the manual assignment, so they manually pick up on students, and then they think, oh, this is the best school for this teacher. And then they link the teacher to schools. And in fact, they didn't consider the street network distance. They didn't consider like the time of traveling in the tube or cycling. So they came to us and they want to find, can you automate the assignment of teachers to schools? So, you know, in this kind of real projects, there are so many constraints. Some of them are very complicated, so we have to give up some of these constraints, and we focus on 3 of the most important constraints. The first one is the multiple model transport network of the teachers. Some of them prefer tubes, some of them prefer traveling using cycles. And there's a constraint of the subjects and a constraint of the school capacities. So this is an illustration of the results of assigning the teachers to schools and initial results. Our model is able to assign each teacher to one school, and compared with the previous manual assignment, our model leads to around 20% decrease in the total travel time, which is great. And this project is, has been done in collaboration with several researchers, Cheng and Levi Wolf, and Nick Behrman and Zhong Guoxu, which is my MSc students. So, some conclusions from my work. Street networks are essential for urban optimization, including, for example, the spatial unit selection and the street network distance. And this impact has been validated in several of the applications, including the police patrolling, the police zones, and the teacher assignment. And in the future, I would like to explore the simulation-based spatial optimization as well as the multiple objective optimization. So thank you very much.
So next up, and the interdisciplinary melting pot is Nilofer. Where are you, Nilofer? Yeah. Nilofer is a collaboration between SpaceTimeLab and Geography. She's supervised by Tao in geomatic engineering, and my colleague James Cheshire, author of a number of best-selling books about London and animal movements and so on and so forth. Nilofer arrived here via Turkey, the Erasmus scheme, and Renault cars, I think, Tom, and goodness knows what. So she's had a rich and varied career before arriving in UCL, and she's now going to say something about well, they've got the ESRI Development Centre Prize this year. So Nilofer.
Hi everyone, I'm going to talk about the student award I got through my PhD, and before that I'm going to provide kind of background information about that, and then later on what I've been doing after the experience under SpaceTime. So first of all, my project was about tree-purpose and identifying tree-purpose in large cities. So this type of information is important, especially for transport planners in urban environment. So previously, kind of information captured through the household travel surveys, but as we know, they are limited and low update frequencies, and it's all not necessarily represent always complete information once you look at the tree-purpose type of information. So in that sense, I use smart card data, that one was individual level, as well as which spatial temporal attributes there, and also it was covering a whole London area. You may see, once you use Oyster card data, what we actually get as a data something like in figure 1. We have a trip, we have activity. Trip means is something, is a kind of a travel, course of travel from one location to other location. And activity means is the time duration between those two consecutive journeys. So you may see different terminologies for trip purposes, something like activity type or the reason of the trip. So in our case, we define the trip purposes is derived information from extracted activities, using processing steps with the characteristic of smart card data or additional information from the other data sources. So in this project, I did classify trip purposes under two sections. One is the mandatory activities. Those are the primary activities, home and work, and the other one is non-mandatory, something like secondary activities, rest of the activities. They are entertainment, eating and shopping. This is the ESRI Innovation Program for the Student of the Year, and this is the we got the prize for the kind of encourage the students as well as the educators to provide not only presentation for the GIS, but at the same time using digital spatial science in the research work and providing more information about their experience. So using the ArcGIS story map, I'm going to go through this so it's starting the information about me and who I am and who I work with during this experience and what type of data I use through my PhD and where they actually publish. And I'm doing a bit of background information, and then later on is providing the methodological aspect of the project. This is based on heuristic approach. I'm using the characteristic of smart car data, specifically individual-based start and station, and their visiting frequency as well as activity duration to be able to answer their home and work location. Once we've done that, we have still 30% of the data in that time data set we have to classify. So from smart car data, we have always limitation because they are on station level, and that's why we use the direction information to go further. So think about one individual and you extract the activities, they are the chain in a day. So, and you already know home and work, and you want to identify the rest of the activities. So in that sense, we ask where you come from or where you go to is our main criteria. And I use the classification based on the before work, midday, and after work. This classification also uses activity-based travel demand modeling from the travel surveys perspective, but this time we use from smart car data individual perspective. First result for the home and work location is presented over here is a swipe map. ArcGIS story map has this feature, swipe maps. You can actually present the same information from different outcomes. So, for example, if you look at the Brixton here, it's more like a home location like that, or here, work location. So, after that, identifying home and work location, the way we actually extract secondary activities, they still have the temporal representation. So we look at the temporal representation to see their times. Basically, those secondary activities got 4 or less hours in their features. At the same time, we have the spatial representation for the same secondary activities using another data source. That one was Foursquare POIs. And we use opening and closing hours for the POIs. And at the same time, we use also the number of the check-ins from POIs to be able to explain eating, entertainment, shopping, and the rest of the activities. Of course, smart car data wouldn't be possible only answering that. The idea over here to combine different data sources to be able to go further. These are the result of the secondary activities. So you have the before work activities from smart car data. On the other hand, you have the enrichment part of the data. Same applies for the rest of the activities. If you look at over here, the after work activities. So what we find in a selected area in central London, once we enrich the secondary activities, we find out that Oxford Circus, Bond Street, they are after work times more like the shopping activities than the Covent Garden or Leicester Square. They are more like these entertainment activities. So if you look at all after work activities from smart car data in the data set, all after work activities are divided between eating, entertainment, and shopping. That shows us that each station, the purpose of travel is different for each station, for each individual, different time and the different day. So also, large cities are very difficult to segregate, especially between home and work location. So this one was about using the heuristic approach to the lack of our labor data, but later on, we managed to use surveys to capture more information, and our research also used the machine learning approach for the activity net framework, which is also published in the literature. after my PhD experience at SpaceTimeLab, I started working my colleagues from CASA and Burbank with project called Symmetry. Symmetry stands for Sustainable Mobility and Equality in Megacity Regions, and the Professor Mike Betty is the PA in this project. So the idea basically here is to develop a platform to understand and predict future developments in mega regions and depict the different regions such as Great Bay Area in China, specifically Shenzhen, in UK, London, and in Holland, Randstad. The idea basically not only indicate the new measurements for the inequality or accessibility, but at the same time compare the cities. My work is in this project under 3 sections, and first of all I work with the lighting location estimation using smart card data, specifically in Shenzhen. So we have basically a similar type of bus network, because once you use the bus, you have the tapping information, but not tap out. Shenzhen is the same. So if you want to extract activities, you have to estimate tap out information, where actually the person get off. So to be able to do that, we have, of course, current methodology, current algorithm. The one I actually try to improve, extract information based on the individual home location, as well as their user types from the payment policy, and use the both import information to improve the accuracy. This work is under review right now, but hopefully will be out soon. The second one is identifying risk profile in the London public transport system. This already worked. I think some of my colleagues already worked in this topic before, but this one was only about Victoria. This time we extend the paper for the whole London network. So idea here is that we have again smart car data individual base, and then we use the times between 2 platforms as well as the train timetable to be able to make a time matrix for each individual, to be able to see their movements in the platform, and to be able to say that what is the risk profile for each platform. The last one is about one of my colleagues called Tom Burbeck recently funding, and it's about, again, mobile phone data and how people move in cities. But this one is, unfortunately, it's not aggregate data. Sorry, unfortunately, it's not individual data. What we were expecting individual data, but this time is aggregate data. It's in each hexagons. So it was about, again, similar ideas what I got from my PhD, but this time we are trying to use the same methodology for the aggregate level analysis. And also we try to kind of find the differences, how the people travel change in terms of travel, and how actually it's appearing after COVID-19. So these are the my work during the PhD with my supervisor, half of my supervisor, as well as my colleagues and friends. I just want to say thank you, and also want to ask if you have any questions.
There's going to be a little experimentation with technology now. Tomlinson Prize Awards. This was perhaps the most obvious. I mean, Mohammed had a remarkable publication career throughout his PhD. He's obviously going on to great things up north. So
thank you so much for inviting me here, and thank you, Mr. James and Al. I'm Dr. Mohammed Ibrahim, and today I want to talk to you a little bit different than what my PhD is about, which is about how can we transform CCTV cameras into sensors at a cityscape. And before I do that, I was fortunate enough to bring that project with me as a co-I and a technical lead, 2 leads, when I first started in my lectureship positions, and it's called Spatial Temporal Streaming Signatures and Where to Find Them. And the word signature is a technical mathematical term refers to plot theory and stochastic analysis. And I was also in collaboration with Professor Terry Burns, who's a professor of mathematics at University of Oxford, where we working together in that project. But before I get to that project, I just want to take you a little bit on the journey. How did I reach this point, and what was my work here in SpaceTimeLab? So my PhD was about computer vision systems and how can we analyze cities. I did try to, with James and Hal, I tried to introduce a concept I call urban eye, which is basically how can we see the whole scene from how a person is riding a bike to what is the weather is like. And if we look at that scenario, we can subdivide cities into 5 layers, like both environment, human interaction, transport modes, natural environment, and urban infrastructure. Of course, there are many models that you can find that can fit within those different layers. But when you talk about safety and security, usually you'll find that they are within those interactions. For example, if we take the topic like cycling near misses, it's a transport-related topic, but the factors related to that topic may or may not be transport-related. It could be because of the weather, it could be because it's a slippery street, or etc. Right? And therefore, if we have this kind of holistic or overview of the city, we might have a better understanding of why, rather than of just detecting things. And during that time, I did things like monitoring traffic, so we can understand everything and counting and symbol like that. But also, I introduced a lot of work related to even cycling near methods, and just by looking at the video representations without even the other factors. But we can also learn to imitate how people cycle in the street and learn from their behavior and how they swerve around cities and so on. We can also try to understand human behaviors and actions at scales, whether what you're doing in the city, and also try to understand different anomalies in that behavior. Or most recently, you can also understand when people are touching their faces at scale when you're looking in cities, and we can see where all those handles goes around. But it's not just about applying AI and applying, because when later on when you have this kind of a lot of models and a huge amount of pipelines, the models becomes a little bit inefficient to train and it need a lot of computational resources. And after all, our brain does not require a lot of computational resources. It's very lightweight. It does require very minimal data. And therefore, that was my paper, which is, again, I was fortunate to be published in the Computer Vision's CDVR, which is one of the top conferences in computer vision, even though I don't see myself as a computer scientist. But it was, the whole idea of this paper was to introduce a different way that is more efficient of translating those images, and instead of looking at them as a tensor, but rather as a flow of information, as if the pixels are evolving over a very short time. And which means that when you train a single model, you reach a model that could be as small as 44 kilobytes. And that basically means that you can embed that technology in a very small devices, and it allows you to do a lot of work with it. And it's worth mentioning for those who knows all of those different models like MobileNet and so on. So this model surpasses most of the model coming even from Google train into that type of compression. So what does that mean? It means that we can take small models and we put them and embed this embedded AI in smaller devices. And here I call it Urban Eye Box, which is again is work I did with thanks for Road Safety Trust and James and Nicola and Tao for enabling that, which was a small device that allows you to, first you can use it to map data and label data automatically, but also you can have it to start sensing on the road all of the different informations, and different than all the different sensors you see in a city. Is this, first of all, is mobile. It's designed for planners, so the data comes out of it is very clean data. You don't need to do any kind of data pre-processing. It becomes all clean in a way, and as I said, it's also a 5 voltage, so you can just charge it with your phone. I took it also just in my own time, push it a little bit further to make a newer one, which is more stronger, that allow also to understand CO2 emissions. But unlike other environmental sensors where you can detect CO2 emissions, you wouldn't even know why is it high or why is it low. So these also sensors could tell you more of the different factors and how that it works. And again, it's a mobile, it has its own 4G internet on it. But now, so now I go back to the topic that I meant to talk about, which is how can we transform existing infrastructure in the city into something that do other type of functions that we might need. And here, why is it important to understand NO2 emissions? As we all know that NO2 emissions has been shown that it can cause severe human health, mortality of course, but also can cause deficits in our mental health. It could cause a lot of challenges for children in our cities, and despite a lot of the government work into reducing these emissions, actively monitoring those emissions, it becomes very hard. And there's two reasons for that. One, you may not find that there is not availability, a lot of availability of different sensors, even here in London, where we have very sparse data set, or when they exist, they are very sparse and they're not connected to the risk factors, and therefore you cannot really make understand the sequence of events that lead to high emissions or low emissions. It's just you will be merely talking about whether the emission is high or no. Where in this type of study that I'm working on, I'm trying to again understand the why. So how that model learns? Well, as I said, dealing with a lot of video streams, and we're talking here about millions of video streams across all Londons, which I have into today, is by training of geographers or urban planners who are not used to deal with a lot of video streams. So how can we distill this information into more useful form that can allow our system to be able to use it and query this data? And here you can see in the right-hand side, this is a temporal representation of the tokens. It's like if you're watching a movie and you start seeing actors coming out of the scene. So from that representation, you can easily query this information than if you're looking in the video. And the second top view one is about looking at the bird view, where you can apply a metric system and measure distances among different road users and understand by default whether there's a near misses, conflicts, etc. And that goes again if you look at it and even make it more precisely. If you move here from the left-hand side, and the other right-hand side is only learned by representation. If you use classical photogrammetry, you will still need to learn about the camera intrinsic and extrinsic parameters. Whereas if you look in the city and there is over than 900 cameras, which I don't know any of their camera models, and there any kind of way you cannot also make a calibration into it, and therefore it will be very hard if you use any kind of classical photogrammetry, whereas with this methodology that I introduced, it will allow you to, for example, if you understand social distancing or accidents and so on. And you can see the accuracy in moving those objects into a top plan. Similarly, it's not just in one image. You can look it up into different video streams. You can scale it up to different things. And when you put it all over London, then you can start understanding conditions and can understand also the different traffic modes and so on. But we can learn from it more than what the obvious and what the traffic is. And here in the case of learning the emission, and instead of we all know graph of knowledge and you're trying to classify or regress a node or a length, whereas what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to move from one graph of knowledge to another completely different graph of knowledge, which doesn't share the same adjacency. They don't share sometimes the same temporal representation. And the idea of that work is how can we move with a very complex data to another complex data without losing information. Bearing in mind also, you're not only looking at those information related to traffic flows, but you also need to consider where are the factories, for example, where are the different types of policies implemented, like ULC within inner space, outside of space. So are different factors that have been taken into consideration, and these factors, they are not all represented within the same two-border representations. Again, I wouldn't go into details, but if we look at all the data as streams of information instead of kernels, again, that's how the model distills information from videos to NO2 without getting into details. And you can end up by learning from that video to predict and understand emissions. But the most importantly for me, and I will try to finish quickly now, is that we can talk about a lot of results and we can keep talking about the different relationships and patterns, but after all, we're not doing all of this models just for the sake of those models. It's to how can we change different urban policies. And there's two things that I quickly talk about, is the effect of the different factors of emission according to the time of the day. Do we need more adaptive policy? Because if you look at trucks count, for example, it will change over the different hours of the day. It's not fixed, and if the policy is fixed, is not going to work well. The second thing is the effect of the current traffic flows on the future level of emissions. And that's, I feel like this is an issue that is overseen or not really there is not a lot of investigation on it, which is if we look, for example, on the time series of NE2 and the time series of all the other data, you will see I found that some of those flows are more likely to contribute to the future level, meaning that if trucks drives at night, is more likely to contribute to the future level of NE2 when people commute in the morning. Therefore, can we do something about random degree control, for example, or other types of things that's related to, yeah. Thanks for your time.
You can hear what I'm talking about. Great. So I won't hold on to this for very long because I'll be handing it over to Ed shortly. But well, first of all, as I say, it's great to be here in London at UCL. And just to say, I've known Ed for quite a long while. I think I first met him when he was studying for his PhD here. And well, not only did he manage to complete his PhD, he's achieved quite a great deal since then, and is now Professor of Urban Analytics at Leeds University. And furthermore, he's he's achieved so much. I really need a bit of paper to write it all down. Okay, so he's now, as I said, at Leeds University. He's a member of the Centre for Spatial Analysis and Policy Research Cluster at Leeds. He's also a Turing Fellow at the Alan Turing Institute and an Honorary Professor at University College London. So yes, not only did he manage, as I say, to complete his PhD, he's achieved quite a bit since then. Before moving to UCL, he also achieved quite a great deal. Before moving to Leeds, he achieved quite a great deal at UCL, becoming basically a lecturer and then associate professor at Bartlett Centre for Advanced Spatial Analysis, i.e. CASA. He also won the Philip Lieberhuhn Prize for Geography in 2022, so as I say, quite an achievement. Now, since we might be thinking about AI and have done quite a bit here, I asked ChatGPT to say something in introduction to Ed. It informs us that Ed research deepens our understanding of human mobility in cities using new forms of data and computational methods to capture how spatial behaviours shape urban activity and dynamics. And I've no reason to doubt that at all. I think that's actually not a bad description. Well, I hope it is, because I'm now going to hand over to Ed. Thanks very much.
Well, that's the conclusion, so we'll probably go to pub now. Okay, hold on, let's get this there. Okay, right there. Okay, hi everyone, thanks for inviting. Nice to be back at UCL. I was here 2 weeks ago, talking in a similar situation, but no, it's nice to be back here, especially in SpaceTimeLab. Now, they say, you probably shouldn't start off with your best bit of work, but I couldn't resist really going with this. So this goes back to actually when I was a PhD student here in the SpaceTimeLab, or then it wasn't called the SpaceTimeLab at the time. And there was a bit of discussion among the team about what, what we should, oh, hold on. Oh yeah, that's right. I can, you don't panic, it's okay. No, it's all right, there's nothing wrong with it, it's okay. When you're throwing my build-up, we were discussing what's called the lab, the team, and so Tal emails around saying to James, who's still here, and Annie Chow, who was a lecturer here, about the centre name. What should it be? Should it be analyst? What do we think? Not good. And then Andy came back with something, I think, positive about it. I replied slightly discerning, or sort of saying possibly not. Give me a few days, I'll come up with something else. But didn't need a few days, just a couple of hours. And look at that. Here's another name. So I couldn't resist putting that in. I came up, and when we were talking earlier about all those people who contributed to the centre, I was waiting for my name to be called out. But there you go. I had to really bring up this. So I was here, doing my PhD. I was working on, well, traffic congestion. I was given the brief, and So I took it in different directions. I looked at trajectory data, primarily about taxis from Alison Lee, and then looked at how behaviours changed across the network according to different parts of the network, according to how the network is shaped and designed, and then looked at where different decisions are made by the taxi drivers in this context, and how their behaviours varied from shortest paths. I've presented this work so many times over the years, you can go and read the papers if you're interested, and then also how your direction of travel also influences you know, how you move through the city. And then this was, you know, built into a model of behaviour, so through bringing it through to the modelling side, thinking about theories of navigation, theories of movement through cities, how people conceive the city in their heads and how they make the decisions. And so then it was about building these models into a kind of spatial simulation, which was, this is what this eventually looked like. So we had a simulation of flow and a simulation of where congestion emerged over a weekday morning. So this was early days of ABM. Now everyone loves ABM, but in those days it was quite new stuff. I think that the sort of those few years here, before I moved on to CASA, sort of taught me a few things. I think you know, the first thing, and these were early days of what we've come to call urban science or urban data science or urban analytics, whatever you want to call it these days. One of them was that, you know, there's these new forms of mobility data that help us understand behaviour in new depth. Rather than looking at surveys or counts, we can actually look at individuals and have some context relating to those individuals. And the agent-based simulation offers a platform for predicting how these behaviours will change in the future. But they rely on a robust theory of behaviour built on good data. So I think these two kind of lessons, which I think I learned by the end of the PhD here, still pertain now and still relate to what I do. So the rest of my talk is essentially a couple of further studies that I've sort of been working on over the years. And I've been told as well by Tal to wrap up by 6, so it won't take very long. So the first area is this area of human mobility science. Now this is a term that we've come to develop in the last, actually quite recently. It's something we put a paper out a couple of weeks ago, and this sort of idea of what human mobility science is. And what I think my take on it is that it relates to more than just transport. So what we're talking about is a more holistic view of behaviour with mobility data, an indicator of that. So we're talking about looking across disciplines and across policy areas, and I think this relates to a lot of where policy is going anyway. It takes a view beyond just a sort of simple silo, as was mentioned earlier as well. And these data sets allow us to go beyond simplistic assumptions about behaviour. We can go into understanding behaviour in more depth. And while in the past I think we've been sort of focused on urban phenomena, you know, I think there's more value, potential value in some of the examples I'll talk about, particularly where we can take this thinking, this use of mobility data, and apply it elsewhere. So one of the key areas, and I think this is one we can all pretty familiar with and possibly have heard too much about to this date, is about the interaction of mobility and health. So we all know that mobility tells us things about people's interactions, about their level of activity. But I think the newer forms of data give us this sort of insight into those individuals in more depth. So what they were doing before, during and after at different events, how their demographics play a role, and how various other influences relate to each other in informing mobility and then health. So there's 2 quick case studies I want to work through in this context. In particular, these ones related to COVID. Again, you know, we all know that COVID and mobility data came very sort of prevalent during time of COVID and COVID policy making. And so 2 of these, one was related to a national scale study of activity, and another actually at a smaller scale, individual scale. And these just give you a sense of, you know, what's possible with these data sets in this way of thinking. So the first one is about household visitation. So we worked with a company called Spectus who have a platform which allows you to sort of look at individual level data with a degree of anonymity. So you can't actually get to individual records, but you can work on individual level data to generate aggregate outputs. So that's what we did. We worked on this data But essentially, a hypothetical sort of example of data would be a sort of map of points as you see on the bottom of the screen there. So that would be an individual's data set, so, that we can sort of potentially work with. And what we did with it was just to run some very simple work on this. I mean, we were running at speed here. We had a couple of different people in policy making who are interested in this work. And we ran some very simple analyses. You've all done them yourselves, I'm sure, where you're extracting different types of activity over a period of time and assigning different kinds of activity types to those classes of activity. I think the different thing that we did here was try to look at, in the context of COVID, when people were making visits to other households. So again, we are wrapping this all up in aggregation, so we're not actually looking at individuals, but we are getting a sense of, and what we generate from this isolating of different kinds of events, is this sort of higher level view on the degree to which household visitation is taking place. So this is a sort of slide of how we calculated the rates. It's not very interesting. I think the most interesting thing is just to look at the data. And the sort of top left there is the temporal variation we've aligned to policies and lockdown policies. And you can see that the extent of visitation to other households varied from a sort of baseline in January and February, dipped down during that first lockdown, but then slowly increased during the course of the year. And it increased during that first lockdown period. Now, what's happening here, this is the problem with these data. We're never quite sure what's going on. We think there's probably a degree to which people were having to adapt to a very blanket policy, so there was a need for support in people's family members' households. We can't be sure. In later lockdowns, you see different behaviours happening. So you see a reduced extent of the lockdown in the second period in November, and then a big sort of another reduction at Christmas. But then this increase as we get past into February, and that really aligns with when the vaccinations started rolling out, and perhaps a sort of reducing adherence to some extent around that period. So, but again, we've got to take all these things with a pinch of salt. I have another slide. I was going to talk about how it was relayed in media and policy, and it's sort of troubling in a sense. We wrote this paper. We wrote major, all the biases. We wrote all about all the biases, all the problems with the data, the caveats. And ultimately, it just gets reported that people started breaking the lockdown in February. We don't think that really happened. It's just a bit, it's a nuanced picture. It's just an insight. And you put it against something like the Google mobility data, and you see similarities. You see similar peaks and troughs. You see this increase to some extent during February in the parks data, and so we feel like this is a kind of useful additional insight into what's going on in the country. But this is there's many caveats and issues to talk about with this kind of data. But another use of this sort of similar kind of approaches was in the hospital context, and this is an interesting one because we were working in UCL Hospital, which is just like over there, and we were working with virologists in that context and infection control teams, and they were concerned about how healthcare workers were at risk of getting COVID and how that was going to affect their workforce. And so they wanted to collect data on the mobility and interactions within the hospital. And taking this kind of approach, we thought, well, let's just go and give everyone Bluetooth badges and they can wear them, and it'd be pretty, unobtrusive, but it would be useful data for the hospital. And of course, COVID hits, so we had that funding came in February 2020 as an emergency funding from MRC. And COVID hits, and then, we can't obviously go into the hospital and put in Bluetooth beacons, that's not possible. So what we did was reconstruct mobility trajectories from existing data sets that were in the hospital. So things like electronic healthcare records, which have a point at which a person interacts with a patient in a room at a time. They have card access logs, so where someone taps into a car, taps their car on their door, and then goes in. And you put it all together with some roster data and a staff ID, you've got something which represents a trajectory from pretty simple data sets. You add in testing data, and you actually have some representation between a test result, positive or negative, and some trajectories across the hospital. And so you can generate, again, the same sort of trajectories, patterns over time, distributions over space. Because we were working with sort of all of the data, we actually had thousands of healthcare workers in our data set, rather than a few who would pick their badges and remember to use them. I won't go through all the results here, but you can just see that you can get this depth, similar kind of depth over space and over time from these data sets, which is pretty rich. And then we started looking at what was affecting people's likelihood of getting COVID. They were things like the number of shifts people worked, the number of night shifts people worked, the number of floors they interacted on, the number of different doors they went into, the number of different patients they interacted with. And then things like ethnicity came out as well, even within the health hospital context, we knew it was prevalent elsewhere. So you start to get a sense of what were the characteristics of the healthcare workers that put them more at risk. And that can be useful within the hospital. Here we're working directly with the infection control team to implement policies that do protect the workers in a better way. And we're still continuing this work. One thing we're doing increasingly is starting to think about heterogeneity and the universality of mobility as well. I mean, that one of the plots on the right-hand side draw direct analogies from the sort of big fundamental works on universal models of mobility. So that's data from mobile phones in the top right, in terms of the entropy of locations and time, number of locations visited. And the bottom right is what we've got from our data in hospital. So there is some degree to which we can actually look at these patterns of mobility and how they vary across space in our urban and our regional context, and apply that similar kind of approach within quite small spaces. And then the next sort of thing we're moving on to is to actually bring in even broadening the kind of multidisciplinarity of this work. We're thinking about how do we bring in virology data, so actually virus RNA data, essentially, which then says, okay, well, we have data on where people move, and we have contact with individuals, and we then have also this virus sequencing data. So this is working with with virologists. And then we can start to identify what's the likelihood that this interaction led to a transmission of the virus. So we can start to then see, well, okay, where is this happening, when, and so forth, and start to design policies that can start to target those problems. And that's one thing we've done. Another bit of work I've not spoken about in here is about dashboard development, putting out data there that is available for decision makers to make timely decisions and shut things down when they need to. So we can start to see that how these behaviours and these behaviours are leading to transmissions of viruses in particular locations and times. Maybe we can communicate that effectively to UCL hospital and really make those interventions quickly. So those are two kind of different, I think, uses of mobility data that go beyond that kind of traditional urban mobility transport kind of context. The other area I've been working on is around in this mobility science area is around understanding this sort of the sort of contextual factors affecting mobility. So we know that these data sets are big and they're pretty rich, but generally we lack very strong data on demographics or experiences at that individual level. So we might be able to infer someone's home location or infer someone's work, but we don't really have much more detail about those individuals, and therefore can't really draw some links between these factors and what people end up doing. So this project I got involved with was a few years ago, and it's a game called. It was actually a game called Sea Hero Quest, and it was a. Hold on. Yeah, and this is a game, mobile phone app, which is developed by this company called Glitches, paid for by Deutsche Telekom with the premise of developing a data set related to navigation at the global scale. So we designed this game with architects and with a massive team of different people involved. But the idea is that you actually move around this space and start sort of, collecting these flags. And every half second we receive your location data. But alongside all those locations, people are giving us their demographics and their contextual data. So telling us how old they were, where they're from, whether they're left-handed or right-handed, what level of education they have, how many hours of sleep they have per night. So we have loads of data on these people. And because of the money Deutsche Telekom put into it, they put in a lot of philanthropic funding. We had a pretty large and wide-spanning kind of media campaign that basically led to 4 million people playing this worldwide. So it's one of the largest studies, we think, in psychology, certainly spatial sort of psychology ever done. And so what's the data look like? Well, we've got trajectories at individual scale for every level. They sort of in aggregate kind of look like this. The data is biased in some extent. Naturally, we've got demographic biases in terms of ages, slightly gender, and certainly country level. But we've got pretty much got people playing from everywhere in the world. So we've got a very large spanning data set on trajectory, on mobility within these game spaces. And you can start to look at then how these demographics play out in terms of performance and how well people navigate within these spaces. So to give you a sense of this, this is an example of 2,000 agents or 2,000 individuals, these are actual data. 1,000 of them are in blue who are older adults, and in red they're younger. So you can see how they perform. Start to see. So they've got to go between these stars, that first one, and then you get the idea. I mean, you can see where this is going. The reds are winning. The reds are going to win by quite a lot. Red to stay. This is not something to feel bad about, though, because this is actually a known thing. We already knew that people lose their navigation skills as they get older. You can see by about 30, 40 seconds in, half of the reds are finished and only a tenth of the blues are finished. We know, these are sort of trends we knew already happened. We know navigation ability reduces very quickly after about about 18. People's ability starts going down. We draw out these kind of metrics, which is sort of bring in also physical motor skills as well. So we account for individual motor skills in terms of the measure. We can start to see how performance reduces as age reduces. There's this gender difference, which is already known. But we're going to start to able to also look at regional variation as well. I'll come back onto that in a second. The most interesting thing, I think, perhaps for this audience was that we also could see how cities and the environment which you grew up in had an effect on how good you are at navigating. So we found that people who grew up in cities actually were worse navigators than those who grew up in rural areas. And people who grew up in, well, yes, I will explore that punchline, but we also then wanted to look at how the structure of the cities, how different types of cities develop or reduce your navigation ability. And so we started looking at the structure of cities. So we started looking at the griddiness versus the organic nature of cities. So you can see sort of two countries here. As an example, Argentina with very strong grid structure environment versus Romania with a much more organic sort of set of city designs. And we started looking, building a model which accounted for some of these known factors that we already established in relation to age and gender, education level, and then started to see what was the effect of where these people who grew up in cities, like how how did this environment affect how good we were at navigating? And we actually found, we actually found that the people who grew up in gridded cities in the US, Argentina, Canada, were worse navigators than those who grew up in organic, these sort of rich, more varied city structures. And we think this is a learned thing. So it's a training process. As we grow up, we are training to be navigators. We are receiving the world in and making decisions and learning how to navigate through that world. So those of us who grew up in in the UK may have had a sort of richer set of street structures to work with than someone who grew up in the US, for example. And that also plays out in the games. So if we look at some of the more gridded environments in the game, you actually see the Americans and people from these gridded cities doing better in those spaces than the more complex spaces. So this is a kind of interesting finding. And yeah, anyway, there's a lot more you can do with this data. This is another little bit of work we just released a couple of weeks ago, and it's about actually there's a sort of cultural effect in terms of this is actually a sort of more sort of meta-analysis really, because we're looking at the difference between how good people said they were navigating versus how they actually were at navigating. So this difference between actual performance versus observed performance, perceived performance, and we can actually see that there's sort of a cultural breakdown. That some of the Germanic countries, Austria, Germany, Switzerland, regularly overrate their performance relative to actually how they really do, which is kind of interesting. So any Germanic people out there, you want to readdress how good a navigator you think you are. Okay, right, so that's, that's sort of mobility science, right? It's all mobility data. The other side of my work is, the other side of my work is agent-based simulation. So I want to talk about agent-based simulation because, well, to me, it's the other side of the coin to all of this stuff. We can learn more and more about how people are currently behaving, or maybe behaved in the past. But what agent-based modeling allows us to do is to look into the future and to think about future scenarios. And I think these data sets and the variety of data sets we have available allow us to do, to build more richer populations, more richer understandings and models of what's going on. And I think there's a really interesting area where how we build this out away from just purely these transport flows to thinking about more broadly about mobility in this broader context, right? So the other side of this is how do we build better models of people's behaviour? So moving beyond sort of simple assumptions about shortest paths and whatever else. You're thinking about how we use AI-led approaches, think about how they might be valuable for actually predicting behaviour. So again, I've got a couple of things to show you on this area. The first of them is the RAIN project, Responsible Automation for Inclusive Mobility. This is a project we've been running for a few years now. It's between the UK and Canada. We've got two sites where we're developing models in Winnipeg and in the West Midlands. And what we try to do is actually get quite a broad perspective on what would drive demand for autonomous services in older populations in these contexts. So we have stages of the project which include focus groups. It includes about what would people want from a service, what they perceive of the service, whether they would use a service and what context. We have user segmentation to try and understand the demand and where it might lie. We have mobility data collection about activities. We have the agent-based simulation, obviously, and then we have a degree of service optimization too, so how we service that demand. We're working across 3 universities in the UK and Canada, and with 2 partners in both sites. And what we're talking about here is not just about a transport service. it's actually about interventions to people's lifestyles. So because we can start to bring in data about people's health and activity levels, we can start to think about, well, you know, what would this do? You know, what would opening up, improving someone's mobility do to their, you know, broader life? This is something we're still thinking about, but you know, it's something where we want to take this. You know, should go beyond thinking about transport intervention as purely about reducing travel times or reducing costs or whatever else. Thinking about actually applications across disciplines and policy areas. So of course, within this context, heterogeneity is fundamental. You know, we're talking about spatial heterogeneity, temporal heterogeneity, demand, but also this variation, I think is quite important, understanding variation across the population, the older population. You know, understand that all these different groups of older people have different demands for this service. So the process is relatively straightforward. I wanted to sort of just talk it through so you can see the kind of data we have within these agents. But, you know, so this is just the Winnipeg model we're working with here. We work with the 2016 census and we build in data from population projections, insurance report data, which is about health, and then some health survey data. And we can start to construct a population that is a replication of the Winnipeg population in 2022. So we've grown the population, obviously, because of the population projections. And every agent is assigned this sort of set of characteristics that might relate to their education level, their health status, their age, their access to a car, their driving license status, whether in a household, and so forth. And we can start to look at whether these population projections relate to anything, you know, real. So Canada's is a 5-year census, and so we then compared our population, synthesized population, against the 2021 census. And, you know, the matches are pretty good in terms of, you know, age, household sizes, distribution of the space, and so forth. We then add in data about, every agent gets a sort of activity plan. So we start to build in data from a time use survey and see, like, what's the different types of activity that are occurring over the course of the day, you know, what travel modes might they use, which gives us a starting point for our simulation. We build in a load of facilities data from a constraint map and building footprints data, and then we build in the supply side data. So in this context, we're actually using MapSim, which is a platform. So when I did my PhD, I actually built the whole thing from scratch. Would not recommend that to anyone. But now MapSim is very popular, so we're, you know, quite easy to use. So we're building, we built the simulation, we validated it, calibrated and validated it, and it's looking pretty good. And what we're starting to do now is start to understand a bit more about mobility, or what we think mobility of these older populations look like. So we can start to see that actually at different points in time, you know, this degree to which people are staying at home is varying. So people who are in different, you know, who are alone, for example, who are living alone, are more likely to be staying at home, particularly when they're over 85. We also see that women are more likely to be staying at home as well, and again, it sort of plays out over age as well. So we're starting to think about, well, how do we use this kind of information to plan our services, to prioritize a service that might be a demand responsive service, that might be something that's adaptive. And Winnipeg Transit, who we work with on this, are very keen because they only have these aggregate models. They can't break down demand by age and gender and location. They can start to say, well, actually, we need to target this service to over 85-year-old women in this particular area of the city. And we can do that because we have a model that actually contains that level of detail. So that's where we're at with that. Again, we've done the same thing in West Midlands. Everything you saw before has been applied in the West Midlands context. Data. And again, we're able to build these large-scale simulations that sort of, again, allow us to plan out. And the last thing sort of I want to show you in this whistle-stop tour is you know, that work relates to you know, that kind of broader policy context. But I think we still need to keep an eye on these models of individuals, right? And you know, way back when I was doing my PhD, I kind of quickly realized, you know, we need to have really good models of individual behavior that actually capture these behaviors in detail. Otherwise, our simulations are just, you know, not good. And so, you know, one thing I've been interested in is thinking about actually how much do people know about the city when they're making their movements around, you know, how do they know, you know, we know that these sort of, there is this variation in navigation ability that is sort of spoken about. Well, you know, there's a load of neuroscience behind all of this, right? There are brains in our hippocampus where you actually control how much or contain how we, control how we sort of understand the world and know where things are, like UCL Hospital being over there. And these cells are, you know, things that we can start to think about how we model at a granular scale. So there's work going on now in computational neuroscience, which is using methods like reinforcement learning to reproduce how this spatial learning is developed. This is very early days stuff. You know, we're still trying to figure it all out, but the idea would be that you actually you start to model individuals in a different way. That everyone has their own knowledge of space that is influencing their choices. So what would that look like? Well, here's some experimental results in bold where we've trained these agents to move around, and you can actually start to see how this is a model essentially of this one. It's a model of how a place cells might work. So this may be a replication of how a place cell is firing in your brain when you're in the place where the green spot is. Right. This is, you know, again, sorry, this requires much more explanation I'm giving it, I realise, so I just really, I don't blame you for being very confused, but this is, you know, this is essentially, you know, a simulation of what might be happening in people's heads. And you can also start to construct grid cells. Many of us have grid cells. Again, it's another construct of navigation or of cognitive navigation. Again, we can start to think about how do we build these models, how we build them into our simulations. This is 5 years, 10 years down the line, but I still think there's some value in thinking about it. And you know, again, we're thinking about how we improve our models of behaviour, improve how we capture and predict future cities and societies, and you know, perhaps this is the way this is the level of detail we need to eventually get to. Whew, okay, right. Final remarks. So I think, you know, I think we've already spoken about this new mobility science, whatever you call it, what you want, allows us to think about mobility in this broader context, about the broader societal and individual facets of influencing those behaviours and larger social systems that we observe. And many of these data lend themselves to understanding sort of how these behaviours interact with characteristics and contexts. And agent-based modelling is, again, as I say, it sort of goes hand in hand with these data. You can start to build these models that integrate in these behavioural characteristics, behavioural frameworks. And as I said, you know, you can go quite far with this stuff. You can start to think about, you know, even simulating brain activity if you really want to. But we'll remain to see if that's worthwhile. I think, you know, I think that what we need to do with it is start to think about mobility as central to a lot of what's going on. Right? We think about cross-policy, cross-operational perspectives on this, creating a sort of greater joined-up thinking. Right. There you go. 5 minutes early. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. I think that was absolutely fascinating, and it's a great example of how you can use novel data, novel analytical techniques, and still bring those into the real world and into policy, and a great example of the sort of work that SpaceTimeLab does. So really enjoyed that. Thanks very much. Now, I think we have got a fairly strict 6 o'clock warning, which means there's perhaps time for one sort of bite-sized question with a bite-sized answer, if anyone has one. Oh, okay, well I've got one. Okay, so I was interested, well in all of it, but one of the things I was particularly interested in was the thing about people's navigational skills. And well, a couple of things. One, I wondered whether you looked at what people did for a living, because, you know, well, in an obvious example, you know, taxi drivers, say, would probably have pretty good navigational skills, you know, but then, you know, there's a lot of other jobs that wouldn't have that, and whether you think it would be worth looking at if you haven't done.
Yeah, we haven't looked at that in the context of that larger scale study. We have looked at it in the context of other studies. In fact, asking taxi drivers a number of different ways. One thing we're doing at the moment is actually getting taxi drivers to describe their routes through the city and recording how long they take to stage part of their journey, which is again sort of indicative of how complex the city might be or how it might be. And then we can, yeah, exactly. And then also we do the same sort of thing with people who aren't taxi drivers to themselves.
That's really interesting. And second thing, just relating to that again, was the urban-rural differences. And I wondered if you looked at people who used to live in an urban environment and now live in a rural one, or the other way around. And
yes, with this, the question was actually, that we asked was where you grew up. So we don't have that detail, I don't think. I think it's hard to tell. I mean, that was a very complicated study. We did some additional data collection, and I think that was tested for. But it was mainly the childhood development that came out as prominent.
That's great. Well, and also, judging by what you were saying about navigational skills, you know, linking to age, I'll probably be lucky if I find my way out of the room. But no, that was very interesting and really enjoyable. Once again, I'd like to thank Ed in the traditional way. I think maybe Tao, you'd like to.
Thank you, Ed. That's wonderful. I mean, yeah. So thank you also for making time. I know Ed is a super powerful, super busy person. Thank you able to make it, especially, you know, I know not only you're busy, but yeah, thank you so much for that. And I really enjoy it. Okay. So as you can see, I mean, SpaceTimeLab is rooted in UCL, but then we come to Casa, we come to Leeds. And we come to the world, but anyhow, also we have students, new class come from the world to join us with what you guys help. Actually, lots of the second supervisors in this room. So thank you for all that. And I think it has been a very packed half day. So I think now we should have a little bit fun. Okay, so that's part of the reason we're doing this. So I think with that load, we close this workshop. I think our volunteers will help us. We'll help you guys go to the boat. If you're not very familiar with the tube system, right? So we have a detailed map for those conference participants, but I'm sure the rest of you guys we are able to manage it, especially we have the experts from Transport for London tour for you guys here. So I'm sure we're going to get a lot. So thanks again. So I hope you enjoyed it as I did. I see you guys on the boat as well. So we have